The link now as soon as it pops up for me. All right, here we go. Jim sent you the link to the stream, so just pull that open and then let it play or whatever, but just click mute.
So I'm gonna go ahead and open it.
Yep.
And you can still see me on the camera. Okay. Once we do this one time, I'll do it right the next time.
Well, I'll have it set up entirely different next time, and this won't be an issue at all. So.
Okay, so right now, I have. It says where it can play. So do I hit play?
Yeah, just hit play, and then the little speaker that signifies the audio, just click on it so that it mutes.
Okay, so right now I'm on, and I'm on mute. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And I see you. How you doing there, big guy?
Hey, what up, homie? What
There
up?
you go. Hey,
My
you know
boy.
what? You are ready for stardom, my friend. You are ready for video stardom. You are ready for the Ohio State Library lecture circuit.
All right, well, if you're gonna flatter me like that, you at least got to take me out to dinner and a movie and all that, sir.
I have to get you some wine, red wine.
Yeah, I need red wine and all that. So yeah, now that we're live here, I got Jim up to date on how we're gonna share the video. Why is it showing? Is it showing the right one? It's showing the video of the video. Nice. Is that how that's working? Sure is. All right, 1 second. What did that? What made that? What made that happen?
I like how I'm about 10 seconds delayed or 15 seconds delayed.
Yeah, that's fucking crazy. Oh, it's because I had that video open. Okay, it makes sense now. I got so confused. I was watching myself watch myself. All right. So what were we even trying to do there? Oh yeah, okay. So we're gonna watch this Asmongold video. My buddy DB the Plug. Let me give him a YouTube shout out real quick. He makes awesome beats. DB the Plug. Your boy.
Your boy.
Hell yeah. So he made, what did he make recently that I really liked? This one right here. Play a couple seconds of this. So you don't have to listen to this, Jen. This is just going to be for a second.
Oh, yeah, I'm right here.
Yeah.
We're all good.
All right. So it's showing up correctly. Okay. And then if anyone's in the chat, let me know if you can actually hear the audio correctly.
In about 3 months, we'll have 10,000 in the chat listening.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, that's your boy DB the Plug. So he messaged me today this clip of Asmongold, and I'm just gonna, me and my buddy Jim here are gonna watch it, give some live commentary, thoughts, and feedback. Penny for your thoughts, that sort of thing. So we're gonna see what Asmongold has to say about Flat Earth. For those of you who don't know who Asmongold is, he's a Twitch streamer, video gamer. He's what you would call a social influencer, so to speak. Has quite a big audience. I don't even think this is his main channel, and it's got 2 mil subs. Actually, it might be, but he's got a very, very big following across multiple platforms. Has a very big audience, typically younger audience. So you're looking at probably 13 to 20 something year old men. So these are your typical Asmongold fans or whatever.
Yeah.
The target audience. So he's got quite a sway. Thank you, Rebecca Broom. Appreciate it. So this is he's brought up Flat Earth a couple of times actually, and it's not in a positive light. And this is a guy, by the way, who's fully capable of being objective and critiquing and giving criticisms. Let me give a quick example real quick of because it's really weird how people are so dismissive of Flat Earth when whether or not they're a paid shill and stuff like that. You can make speculations all day, but this is just an interesting pattern behavior that I've noticed. So there's a game that I play, so I kind of have some further knowledge on this. I don't even know how many clips he does a day. Yeah, it's too many. Anyway, So there was a controversy in this game that I play, um, where this content creator was basically being abused and mistreated by the staff of the game. It's called Old School RuneScape, and basically what was happening was this other person that plays the game was facilitating these trades and deals for death matching, which is basically like where you agree to fight somebody under certain conditions, and whoever wins, you keep X amount of whatever you agree to risk each other for, right? So she was like facilitating these trades and making money off of it, doing a bunch of shady stuff, real world trading, and then she ended up dating someone that works at the game company, and she would use this person to ban her competitors and ban other people that beat her, fairly and stuff, so that they couldn't, make money off of her or like, take from her or whatever. So anyway, this big controversy happens and all this stuff goes down, and Asmongold like fully investigates it thoroughly and offers to have this other person that was involved in this, that's doing like all the scamming and negative shit. He offers to have her on and and tell her side of it, but he's like, but I'm going to investigate it fully and have questions, and I'm not going to like hold back, because like everyone already knew the story at this point. So like he does have the capability of like applying objectivity and being critical to something, but when it comes to flat earth, he's almost always like insanely negative for some reason. Does it matter now? Can we change that? Oh, Morley. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so
Right.
anyway, we'll yeah, so yeah, we'll get into what he has to say and just kind of see what happens here. And I haven't watched this clip yet, so this is going to be live. So Jim, if you could start your video at the same time so you can listen to it or whatever through the thing. There'll be a slight delay. So before we give commentary, I'll have you mute and stuff so that there's no feedback.
Yeah, I'm right now. I'm muted, and it's on that. It's on pause right now, so it's probably turned on your end, and it's muted.
All right, go ahead and refresh it, and then just play it and let it be unmuted. I'm gonna go ahead and play this out or whatever.
Earth is flat.
And then just mute your mic for a minute. So commentary, I'll have to mute stuff so that there's no feedback.
So should I have the mic on now?
You should mute your mic, yeah, for a second, and then
Okay.
we'll play this out. Okay, so here we go with the commentary for Asmongold.
Us have spent our entire lives thinking that the Earth looks like this.
Yeah.
But you can forget about that, because the Earth, in fact, well done, nicely caught, looks like this. This is what it is. It's flat.
Uh-huh.
And it has a, just like Game of Thrones.
So it's like a coin?
It has a big ice wall.
Well,
Mark
I see.
Sargent is one of the leading voices in the Flat Earth movement,
Right.
and he believes it's time that we all woke up and realised that we actually are living on a flat disk.
Well, Mark joins us now.
Welcome.
Good morning, Mark.
Welcome.
I mean,
Might be
obviously,
doing
there are
something wrong
thousands
on
of
my
questions,
end.
which I'm sure you've been asked.
You should mute your mic. Yeah. I'm sorry. Say that again.
I can hear.
For Asmongold.
Yeah, I'm not. Now I hear it. Now I hear it. Okay, very good.
Okay.
1,000 times.
A few, yes.
Yeah. So, we believed for many years that the Earth was flat. Now we can see that it's actually round. Sure, we can see that it's round. Sure. So how come it's not?
It's not because
I love how the best way to stop a flat earther is to ask them stupid questions, because most flat earthers are stupid and are good at answering smart questions because they don't understand them. But stupid questions, they don't know how to respond because it's on their level.
you can't prove
It's like
it.
they're like, like
So if you ask this guy about length contraction, time dilation, reference frames, velocity, anything like that, he'd have no fucking clue what what he's talking about. Anything that's based on the heliocentric model, curvature, stuff like that.
Are you talking about Mark Sargent?
No, I'm talking about Asmongold. I'm sorry, I paused. I'm a little ahead of you. It'll catch up.
Yeah. So yeah, he's not going to know that, but it's okay.
No, he's just prefacing that like we sound smart because we answer questions that literal retard argument. I don't even. What did he even say?
questions because they don't understand them. But stupid questions, they don't know how to respond because it's on their level.
You can't prove
It's like
it.
they're like,
You asked this guy about length contraction, time dilation. Okay, mute your mic, please, for a sec, Jim. Velocity, anything like that. He'd have no fucking clue what what he's talking about. Anything that's based on the heliocentric model. Jim, you got to mute your mic, bro. Like that. I got it. You're good.
You know, like how some Pokemon are like immune to certain psychic effects?
Globe. Everything that we, in fact, it starts out with.
Yeah, so you know how when someone starts telling you about how space-time is a concept, it's not real, you immediately block it out and assume that everything you've been told your entire life is true. Yeah, I'm familiar with the psychic block wall. Go ahead.
Everybody that's in the flat Earth community starts out looking at the globe saying, can you prove it? Can you prove the globe, especially without using NASA? Because it's not that we found out that the world was a globe back in 1972. We knew for 5 centuries. So that's how everyone starts. You try to prove it in a court of law.
But don't you want to believe that it's right?
No.
I have more proof than you do.
I would challenge that.
Well, I've got footage here that's direct from the space station, and that's live pictures from the space station now.
Right.
All alive.
Again, started from the American military. Yes,
Yep, that's fake. Yeah, sure. Well, I watched Interstellar before. I've seen Avatar. Those blue guys real? Nope. The hell's this real?
I'm saying it's worse than that.
So what is that then? What am I
It's not even necessarily, is this real? It's how could we authenticate that it's real, right? How could we verify the chain of custody for it to be real, right? So if you look at how international courts handle satellite data and quote unquote satellite imagery and all these things, both parties have to agree on it. And there has to be, you have to like, there's like strict adherence to the chain of custody for the data, because if the data is manipulated at any point during the data processing point, like the raw data, if it's manipulated at any point and when it's after its final what's it called, when it's finally compiled into an image out of that raw data, anything that was changed you will never be able to tell in the final image. So the chain of custody on it is extremely important. So I challenge you to get the authenticity of this footage, right? It's not about, can it be faked, is it fake? It's, can we verify the authenticity of it? Because the trust is what's in question here. And, the organization that's presenting this, they're in question. So they're going to need to, provide that chain of custody, provide that sort of evidence where it can be authentically verified. Now I've taken it upon myself to go through the highest publicly available data that you can get from, quote unquote raw satellite data, compiled it. It's already been stripped of all of its metadata, and it was already pre-compiled, and one of the images that comes compiled with it is already had its orientation corrected. So you're looking at data that's from a chain of custody that you have no fucking clue what happened to that data. Now, when you take it to a website like Photo Forensics and try and do like Photoshop analysis of it and stuff like that, what you'll find is that each photograph will give different and then varying results. So sometimes you'll get that weird pixelated thing when you zoom in on stuff and it looks like, oh, this is evidence of it, being copy pasted in and that sort of stuff. And other times you'll see like a real smoothing, blurring effect, and it's just, there's no consistency to it. There's no way that you could verify it. So to hinge your entire belief system on an image presented by the organization that has a history of fraud, a history, that at the bare minimum you should look into and be skeptical of, and not take everything they say at complete face value, especially when the evidence that they put forward is extremely lax in terms of what they have to do for the barrier of it to be considered evidence, right? All they have to do is show you a video and say it's real, right? The only reason you don't believe Avatar is real is because they told you it's a movie. You know what I'm saying? Like if they said, hey, we put some dudes on Jim's exoplanet over there in the background, if some space marines just landed in, the blue people that live on Jim's exoplanet would have to, start an insurgency and fight back, and Jim would have to take over and become the warlord. Jim, what are your thoughts on this?
You did mention that the Himawari satellite.
The Discover satellite specifically is where I got my raw data from. That was the highest available raw data that you could get. Now the Himawari does images that are on a 15-minute delay. They're pre-compiled. They come with all that pre-compiled stuff from the weather patterns with that FTP server. Actually, let me see if my FileZilla still has that in memory. I'll just pull that up real quick to show people.
Yeah, because you were saying the Himawari satellite has data already booked into 2095, which is what, 63 years from now.
Where do you see history? Yeah, I don't have it off the top of. I could pull it up, I guess. It doesn't matter. We're kind of getting off track. Maybe I'll pull it up later. But the Himawari stuff is on like a 15 to 30 minute delay, sometimes 40-minute delay. you can actually zoom in on the pictures themselves and see the purple lines where they've stitched the images together. So like people think they're under the impression that this satellite is out there taking like a snapshot of the entire globe. Not what's happening at all. They're taking strips of data, compiling it, assembling it, sending it through the deep space network. You know, it's getting distributed and analyzed by other systems, and then it gets distributed around to the scientific community.
And
So
people on TikTok and Discord think it's real. Yep.
yeah, I mean, we all did it at one point. You know, it's very
Yep.
fantastical. So
Yeah, I'm not looking at it like I do.
It's all a fairy tale. The whole thing's a fairy tale. Yeah, and I don't want to disappoint people, but my exoplanet, which just in case you don't know, because it's real. I mean, Alan and I came up with essential relativity, which we will explain in some of the future episode. But behind me, I've gotten quite a name in the world. My exoplanet behind me is called SR666 Santis, and Santis spelled backward is Satan. So my exoplanet, which is behind me, which has a couple restaurants that you can see. One's a macro restaurant with Taco Bell, and the other one's a micro restaurant. And then I have a couple of hotels behind me. It's 135 trillion light years away. I discovered it. I actually went on the back of a photon, and I went out and I got out of the Earth's atmosphere so I could see everything. I went out and actually borrowed the James Webb telescope, and I looked out 135 trillion miles, and I found my exoplanet, which I think you can see right back here. And so it's very special to me.
now,
And
Jim,
go ahead.
I got a question about astronomy. Now, is there a finders keepers policy on exoplanets? Like, is it like whoever smelt it dealt it? Because you found
Hey,
it first, do you get to keep it, or how does this work exactly? Like, what's the
it's not
legality behind it? Is there a contract involved? Is it sovereign citizen kind of stuff? Is it like, you know, do you have an affidavit involved?
I have Elon is
Hmm.
a very good close friend of mine, and he actually has the dibs on outer space. He
He
has the dibs.
did
He
he
has the
buy
dibs.
it? I heard he bought it from the other control, you know, the controllers that be. I heard he copped it. What
He
are your
he con
thoughts?
he contracted it out. You know, I read the fine
He's
I read the
leasing it
fine
out to
print.
NASA.
Yes, I read the
I
fine
see.
print. I read the fine print,
Yeah.
and because I have more money than Elon Musk does, I actually bought my exoplanet straight out.
So
Now
you
I
okay.
want you to know, Alan, how big my exoplanet is.
How big
Here
is
on Earth,
your how big is it?
yeah, here on Earth we have 8 inches per mile squared, 3959 in miles, and 24,901 miles circumference. My exoplanet is so big that it's not 8 inches per mile squared; it's 3 miles per mile squared. That's how big it is, 3 miles per mile squared. Now, if you can imagine how big that is, it's just unbelievable because you
It's
have to look into how
tremendous.
many inches are in a mile, and then times it by three, and then you got how big my exoplanet is. And so it's so big that four photons can actually accompany a spacecraft there. And it's really interesting because I took one of those photons and I got it on its back because supposedly a photon is 300 million, what is it, 300 million meters long or something like that. So
Well,
I got,
well,
so,
the photon is it's the physicality that is required of it to propagate through the vacuum would be directly proportional to the size of its wavelength of its existence. So when you say you hopped on the back of it, that would mean that you hopped on it from the source of it and you never actually went anywhere because the photon would just
hey,
be stretching. So Jim, your scientific lore is inconsistent with the heliocentric mythology, and I, for one, will not have that on my show.
Alan, Alan, this is my fairy tale. You
Oh,
can't
I'm
have
sorry. I
it.
apologize, Jim. I apologize.
Hey, Alan, we got some ground rules. This is my
Yeah.
exoplanet, and you can't have it. And this is my fairy tale, and you can't borrow it.
All right.
So it's all mine. Whatever I want to come up with is mine because everything is relative. Because Einstein married his first cousin who was a relative, and then we won't get into the other thing. And so,
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, not to detract too far from that, let's bang out the rest of this Asmongold real quick,
okay.
or real quick,
Sounds good.
real quick,
Sounds good.
and we'll finish this up. So if you could please, I'll mute your mic, and then if you could unpause and unmute the stream on your side and just like refresh it real quick so that it catches up to date, and then I'm gonna play out Asmongold, and we'll go from there.
You're looking at CGI, nothing more. Something that started out very
There it
simple back in the 1950s and advanced till today.
So the CGI that was like the like the moon landing. Yeah.
I'm a bit of a space nut.
Sure.
And
Yeah, exactly. They had to come up with a lot of CGI to make the simulations to do the moon landing and make it possible. If you think the moon landing wasn't done with CGI modeling, they actually created specifically really intricate physical models so that they could take really high quality detailed video so that they could map it into computer imagery and make simulations. So yeah, definitely exactly like CGI for the moon landing.
so, no,
Sorry.
I'm
Specifically.
very happy with that. And I've got the Apple
In the 1970s.
phone, which has got where the space station is right now, and I have in the past looked at those live pictures, and I have seen where the space station is, and the light's coming over me now. And so I have watched the space station. You can see it as that light, it doesn't blink, doesn't flash, goes over as a solid light. And at the same time, I've looked at my laptop and I've seen where I am.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not saying there's something up there. No question. Is there a vehicle that could be the ISS up there? Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, there's definitely a space station, but it's a fake space station that it's in the air, but it's broadcasting something that's different. Like they put it in the air and they know that it's flat, but they have it video, like the video is actually CGI even though it's actually up there.
So there's a lot of there's a lot of speculation on what the ISS could potentially be. We found some potential correlation with the ether rotation speed that Michelson-Morley detected and how fast they say that the ISS is going. Now, what he said about observing something in the sky, but we don't know what it is, that's absolutely true. People do see the ISS. You can use the tracker to get all that. But here's the ISS over a flat Earth. Let's just look at the orbital pattern. So let's see. ISS orbital pattern. I just pulled it up the other day too. So it does this over the ball, right? This right here. It does these like sideways orbits or whatever they say, right? But if you flatten this out, it's literally just following a flower of life geometric pattern over a flat Earth. I can't find the ISS orbit AE map. Yeah, right here. Here it is. So yeah, if there's a magnetic vortex in the North Pole and we live on a, if this as a methyl equidistant plane projection map represents, what we live on as a stationary plane, maybe not in terms of size and distance of continents, but just, general idea of where we're living. The magnetic vortex that goes on that Michelson-Morley possibly detected at 8 kilometers a second transpires to 18,500 kilometers per second, and that's what they say the ISS is. So there's some correlation to potentially some magnetic phenomenon going on. Like, we're not saying that they don't have technology, that they don't do weird shit, but this whole presentation of things that they do on the ISS, I mean, just watching the footage from the ISS to watch that and go, yeah, that definitely proves the thing that the light in the sky is what I see. And then there's also other problems with the ISS too, right? So if you look at the orbital height of the ISS, I think it's 500 miles, they say, right? And if you compare that to how far that is, off the surface of the Earth compared to, when it goes on the other side of the Earth, right? The sunlight from 93 million miles away isn't going to be able to hit it hit it at that angle because the Earth's curvature is literally going to be blocking it, right? But you can see the ISS in a clear beam, and like, by the way that they say that you see the ISS is from the sunlight reflecting from underneath it, right? So in order for something to be reflecting, it has to maintain that line of sight with you and have sunlight behind it, hitting it to get that reflection, and that doesn't happen. So the fact that it maintains a solid beam everywhere and you can see it consistently like that is a little mini conundrum in itself. So yeah, there's a lot going on with the ISS, but to simply chalk it up as, yeah, it's definitely solid proof of what they do. Because when you watch the footage, it's all It's all dog shit, honestly. There's, entire channels dedicated to it, like Level Earth Observer. He finds like new stuff literally every couple of days. There's new ISS footage where they do some CGI, shit, or there's a harness involved. And in terms of like long-term streams, right? So they say a lot of people are under the impression that they do 24-hour live streams. Their streams are about, what is it? I think they're 45 minutes. Every 45 minutes they cut it and take a break for 90 minutes because they say that they're on the other side of the earth and they don't have a way to communicate. So they don't have like uninterrupted live streams. They don't have a consistent way to like present these astronauts in a way like you're watching. Like there's more consistent coverage on the reality TV show, like Big Brother or something like that, than there is on the ISS, which is surrounded by, satellites and all these support teams and all these countries working together to provide coverage. So you're telling me these motherfuckers couldn't work together to set up a network so that the ISS could maintain constant coverage with the place that they have to radio in if there's any problems? Like, okay, man, like it's your ball, we're just spinning in it or whatever. So we're gonna continue on. I'm sorry, Jim. I'll unmute you 1 second. I apologize, brother. Had you muted
okay.
if you were saying something.
It's cool. It's cool. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, with the ISS is that, they tell us it's 245 miles up there. And
Oh, is it only 245? I thought it was 500.
no, it's 245. Hubble is supposedly 335.
Yeah, 254 miles. So,
Yeah,
as
so-
Neil
so-
deGrasse Smyson would say, it's like you're just a little tiny, rice grain above this beach ball. So when you're on the other side of that beach ball, the light, you're not far enough away where people on the other side of the ball are going to be able to maintain that reflection. At some point, the Earth's curvature is going to block it, but it doesn't. So that's,
Yeah.
it's like, what is it? Who knows, man? But like, we're never going to know. And just blindly believing in the ISS is going to lead us exactly nowhere.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is 245, 254. It's not. People don't realize how high 10 miles, 20 miles, 30 miles, 40 miles, 50 miles, 60 miles is. And I don't think anybody, who's on our side of the fence denies that things can't go that high. Of course, the thing when you go that high, you get such, a little bit of, pressure, you lose your pressure. So things may not be able to push off themselves so well, 50, 60 miles up there. But nobody denies that you can't go up 10, 20, 30, 40 miles. And that's very, very, very high. You think 40 miles is high, do the math. Do the math. That's over 200,000. That's over 200,000 feet. And Bumgarner in New Mexico jumped out at 127,854 feet. So if you go up 40,000 feet, 40 miles, that's almost double the height that Bumgarner supposedly jumped in New Mexico in 2012. That's a really, really high distance. And if some sort of ISS wants to be that high, I have no doubt that it could be.
Yeah, and on top of that too, we have no idea how high it actually is, right? Because of the way angular size works and in the speed and distances that it would have to cover, it could the way it could proportionally scale, it could be even closer, right?
It could be.
And
it could be a lot closer.
Yeah, so there's really no way to tell whatever it is that's like producing the light. There's no way to know what that is or do any sort of analysis of it because all the data that we could analyze could easily be spoofed, and they just do a lot of weird, suspicious shit on the ISS with the video presentations that they do anyway. So there's no real reason to fall back on that as like, yeah, this is a solid slam dunk for the glob.
If you put something up there 10, 20 miles and you put a that looks like, quote, the ISS, and you put a propulsion system behind it, and the air is just fine, and Newton's third law of motion works out just fine, and everything, it's going this way, and there's something pushing it. Newton's third law of motion works great 10, 20 miles up, and it's going across the sky. Obviously, it's not going 17,500 miles per hour, but it's going across the sky at a relatively good rate. And people are going to look up and they're going to go, I see something 245 miles away and it's going across the sky real fast. No, it may be up there 10, 20 miles. It's going across the sky at a far reduced rate. It has a propulsion system behind it that's causing it to do that. And you call it the ISS 245 miles up there, and you have your little outer space fairy tale. It's very easy to fool people, and it's just, I mean, it's just unbelievable. And the amount of money they put into this outer space fairy tale is unbelievable. And they started at age 5. I
Well,
mean,
you know,
yeah.
it is unbelievable, and it's also like when you understand that it's like, you know, the mechanism that they use to lock down all this proprietary technology and have everything under what's it called, under patents, under the ISS and stuff like under the ISS, under NASA and good government control, you know, that all these people invent to solve, you know, fake problems and non-existent things. You know, all that technology gets patented to NASA, you know, the government by default. Then they turn around and sell, lease those patents out to corporations. And they look at his Twitch chat too. Oh, do I have a Twitch chat? Is it up? Is it showing? This chat program was supposed to show both of them. One sec, Jim. My buddy said that there's Twitch chat. Or oh, are you talking about? I think he was talking about in the. Are you talking about? I think he was talking about in the. I'm retarded. I'm. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Yo, Rebecca, I'm glad you're enjoying the vernacular here. The glob, you know, your ball, we're just spinning in it. Good times. Yeah, Jim, it's extremely easy to trick people and lie about it, especially when they've been propagandized to the point where they want to believe in it. You know, I don't think there's anyone that doesn't really like, there's people that don't like sci-fi and stuff, but it's cool as shit. Like, even the people that don't like it, they're like, yeah, dude, light years, space travel. Like, you know, they're into it.
Yeah, I think the thing that we're going to talk about a lot of things, but one thing we're going to do is we're going to debunk this thing right here, and as we debunk this thing over the next next weeks and months, this is one thing we're going to get, we're going to debunk. I have so many little questions about this, all these little trick questions, and we'll get to them in time. And the first trick question is what caused this thing to be tilted at 23.4 degrees? What was the reason that science
Oh,
tells us?
dude, Jim, get this. So an asteroid, or not an asteroid, I'm sorry, an object the size of Mars, they say, hit the glob in its early formation stage, and half, you know, like a third of the glob separated and became the moon, and the two globs coalesced in space. But the tilt was caused by the Mars-sized object. And so think about this. There's this thing in space, this big spherical object in space. It gets hit. What stops the tilt to give it that perfect 23? Why isn't it perpetually rotating in that direction? Why would it do it in such a way that it like just nicked it, gave it that little 23-degree burst, and then also in such a way that it all balanced out where the part of the glob that was ejected from it also just kind of formed a gravitational relationship with it in such a way that it, one, tidally locked itself, so it and then two, fell into a perfect orbit where it has like cycles and everything, and it's in such a way that it appears to be for exactly 400 times the distance away from the sun, and coincidentally it's 400 times smaller than the sun. You know, it's crazy, dude.
It is literally a fairy tale, and there are reasons that it's a fairy tale. And if I can read this off for just a second,
Yeah, go ahead.
I may reference this in the future. I'm just going to read it off. It'll take me 2 minutes. Something that George Wald, W-A-L-D, said back in August 1954, The Origin of Life in the Scientific American, and I quote, "When it comes to the origin of life, we have only two possibilities as to how life arose. One is spontaneous generation arising to evolution, and the other is the supernatural creative act of God. There is no third possibility. Spontaneous generation was scientifically disproved over 100 years ago by Louis Pasteur, Spallanzani, Redi, and others. This leads us scientifically to only one other possible conclusion, that life arose as a supernatural act of God. I will not accept that philosophically because I do not want to believe in God. Therefore, I choose to believe in that which I know is scientifically impossible, spontaneous generation arising to evolution. George Wald, Nobel Prize winner, even and so he actually came and said that himself. I don't know if I lost Alan here. Are you still there, Alan?
Still here, brother. What's up?
Okay, sure. And so did everybody? Did you hear that quote? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
good. And so I may have touched something on my laptop, so forgive me. So we might reference that in the future. But George Wald, who is a Nobel Prize winner, Wald, W-A-L-D, he basically says the scientific community, which 90% of physicists are atheists, he says he doesn't want to believe in God, that he would rather believe in something that is scientifically impossible, which is, evolution. And so, that's basically where people go. Their default position is that God does not exist. Their default position is the Bible is a fairy tale. And what they've done is they've made a new default position that says outer space fairy tale is true. And that, yes, even though it sounds really crazy, that my exoplanet may be real, and I may be able to go there on the back of a photon.
On the front of the photon.
On the front of the photon, as that Alan has said in his wonderful 94-page PDF, that mainstream science has told us that a photon can travel 13.7 billion years with 9 zeros in the vacuum of outer space, which is 80 sextillion, 600 quadrillion miles, 18 zeros behind it, in order to reach our eyes. And so if you want to believe in that, and the funny thing is, when you talk to somebody and you say, is this true, who's into the globe, they'll actually say,
into the globe, like it's naughty. Like being into the globe is like being a homosexual in the 70s. It's like, are you gay? Like, are you into the globe, dude? Are you a glober?
I'm telling you,
it's very weird.
I'm telling you, if I'm serious, guys.
You think people are antipodal to you? Ugh, gross.
Hey guys,
just physically repulsed by it.
Hey guys,
yeah. Sorry. Let's finish up this Asmongold thing, because we got a lot of other stuff to get to.
Okay.
We're only 3 minutes in and we dunked on like everything we said so far. It's crazy. All right.
That's funny.
So let's keep going here. Yeah, absolutely, DB. So DB wanted me to share this link real quick. I'll go ahead and post it. Copy link. I'll share this with you, Jim. I think you'll really like this guy too. He does a lot of biblical and scriptural studies and applies that lens through his how he analyzes everything in his presentations. It's really, really well done and interesting insights. This is the channel for those in the chat. It's called Truth Unedited, and what DB linked was called Breaking Out of the Matrix Part 4, Is Modern Science a Gift from God? If I remember correctly, that was the one where he talks about how the Rockefellers and stuff bought modern medicine and all that. So I think you'll appreciate the history on it, Jim. It really goes into great detail on it. I think maybe we could watch that later or something too, actually, for our Rockfin thing.
Yeah, I think if you go to John D. Rockefeller, you can go real deep there. I mean, he was a puppet, but he basically did the medical thing, and he's done the educational thing, and it's actually Rockefeller. You can actually trace Rockefeller. Seriously, you trace Rockefeller money back to this.
To the glob. I know, dude, that globular money, bro. All right, let's fucking trace Asmongold's analysis of flat Earth.
Not a chance. And you can look at the interior footage and production value. I challenge anybody. I talked to Terry Virts, American astronaut, and look, they're all. Remember, everybody that goes up there are high-ranking military. They start out at colonel.
Why would you bother?
Why would you bother faking?
Why? What's the point of faking it?
Well, that's one of the bigger questions, which is why keep this thing a secret. And we're talking.
I don't know, control everyone's mind, make them submit to math equations and things they don't understand, tell them a bunch of fairy tales so that when people look in the sky, which men have been doing for, I don't know, all of eternity, you can tell them fairy tales and have mastery over them, sort of like a priesthood, similar to how back in the old days, the priest class, used a Bible that was in a different language than the common folk could read. And if you wanted to know God or have a relationship with spirituality, you had to talk to your boy old translation priest and hope he was giving you the gravy and wasn't trying to fuck your wife or something or conspire against you to take all your, to be like, oh, hey, God wants you to actually give me all your resources. And you're like, oh, okay, makes sense, checks out. I don't speak Latin, so God definitely said that, So just that kind of stuff. Imagine you had the ability to just like tell everyone that you could explain the world to them and that they should, and if they had a question about the universe, the heavenly bodies, creation, the origin of existence, that they have to come to you for answers. I don't know. Why would they do it? I don't know. Why does anyone do anything?
Well,
why fake
in
it?
today's world, they do things because they're told to. They don't think about it. They're told to do something. They're told to do something in school. They're told to sit down. They're told to go to recess. They're told when to go eat. And when you go to high school, the same thing. When you go to college, you have to go to classes. You have to do this.
You have to go up and down stairways, Jim.
I like stairways because stairways prove the ball.
Yep.
And and going to college proves the ball.
Yep.
And I want you to know that if you haven't gone to college or walked up a stairwell, then you don't know anything and you must be a stupid flirt.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I'm going to continue on with this.
Yep.
Because if you don't fake it, eventually the private industry is going to get involved, and then they're going to find out on their own.
Stepping into a college classroom makes you smart.
Indubitably.
That's a good word.
Yeah.
That would be bad because
If you don't keep this thing secret, remember we're talking about something that was discovered back in 1960. The public wasn't ready in 1960.
Yeah.
They just weren't. Their potential academically, economically, religiously, chaos potentially. But so they weren't going to take that chance.
Well, those Apollo rockets that went
Now, I don't agree with anything or like necessarily with everything Mark Sargent's saying, just because we're both, flat earthers, allegedly. Whatever he's saying, I'm just not even really actually listening to what he's saying. So whatever he's saying, don't attribute to me.
up into the air.
It could be right. It could be something I
heard-
agree with. I don't know. I'm sorry, say that again, Jim.
Yeah, I heard this interview, so it lasted about 10 minutes, and he had a chance to slam dunk.
Oh,
And he punted.
he punts it, dude, every time, bro. Every time. It's a little sus at this point, but that's neither here nor there. We shall continue.
Did they go?
They didn't go anywhere. They just went off into the ocean and ditched. That was again. I'm an American.
He
Look, we're
punted
taught,
so
we're our
bad.
team. Wave
He
the flag.
had 10 minutes where he could have actually slam dunked, and he did nothing. So I don't
Yeah.
know. Someday we'll talk. We'll talk about things that maybe he's done or whatever. But
Yeah.
and you have to give people credit who were there at 2014, 2015.
Absolutely.
Who actually started it, and then
Dude, a lot of people's flat earth career started with his videos that reference him and stuff. So like, not knocking the guy, but every time he's on these gives these public appearance where he can like really stick it to him, he just never does. It's just a real big letdown.
And so
Here's
it's tough for me
what
because I love the American.
in the 18 months, 16 months that I've been in my stationary topographical plane, this is what I've seen from 15, 16, 14, 2014, is that they came out and said observations, measurements prove we don't live on a spinning space ball. And that's all they went with. They didn't go with anything with general and special relativity, and they especially didn't touch quantum mechanics. So they left the scientific community to GR and SR and quantum mechanics, and the quote flat earther couldn't keep up. So they got the reputation of being really stupid. And along comes Austin. Austin goes, well, no, we're not going to be stupid. We're going to look at this stuff, and we're going to tear the globe and special and general relativity apart. And at the same time, we'll get into quantum mechanics a little bit. And now all of a sudden, we have a few of us that are going, hey, special general relativity, quantum mechanics, Planck's constant, and
Planck's
time
constant.
dilation and time dilation, pound Repka is all a bunch of baloney, and we're not going to take it anymore. And we're a
Yeah.
little bit more aggressive than they used to be, 10 years ago.
Sure. Yeah. So we're gonna try and play the rest of this out again.
So you flew in
Well, why would
straight
you love the American space program if it's fake, though?
to get here.
I did fly in a straight line to get here. Yeah.
think
And
the
you've
days
got this,
of
so we've got a dome over the top.
Yeah, so let me just real quick. So the globe that you threw away, what we're talking about is we are all brought up taught that we live on this tiny little rock that's covered in
Hang on one sec, Jim. I'm playing the rest of this audio out.
on a flat enclosed world.
Yeah, you're good. I'm just going to finish this.
Walls and a floor and a Truman Show. The Truman Show. Yeah, very, very similar.
Yeah.
That is so big that even our best and brightest didn't figure it out until about 1960 when they did decide to keep it secret. The really, really short version is you won't live on a globe. This is what it looks like on the outside. That's what it looks like on the inside. There you go.
Yeah, so 1960, real quick, he's referencing Operation Dominic and Operation Fishbowl, I believe, where they detonated so-called nuclear bombs, aka just regular bombs, in the as high as they could get them to go, and they were using the acoustics to measure, the reverberation off of the firmament. So when he says that they figured it out, that's probably what he's referring to. And what was that? So shortly after that, after those two operations, I think it was 2 or 3 years after that, NASA was formed, the Antarctic Treaty was formed, signed, and then the consequent legislation afterwards to further support the Antarctic Treaty has been signed, and that's where you get into the whole legal rigmarole. The adherence to the treaty itself seems harmless on the face of it. It's the subsequent legislation after the fact. What was the other one? And Walt Disney started Disney, where they started, using cartoons to manipulate people and do, work on video editing and all that kind of stuff. All these things came into conjunction. And if you look into the history of these people, they're all related, used to hang out. Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowley, and Walt Disney. There was some other guy, I can't remember his name, but they all used to hang out. And if you remember Aleister Crowley, wait a minute, do you mean the guy that was a Satanist and did a bunch of sex magic and wrote a book on demons and stuff? Yep, that's the guy. And one of the compliments that he gave to Jack Parsons was he says that Jack Parsons is truly a child of the bowels. So he called him a shit baby. And that is high praise from the people of inverted morality where imagine Satan's not going to say, hey, good job, bud. He's going to be like, you're truly a disgusting, vile creature. And you're going to be like, oh, that's awesome, right? Because, it's inverted as fuck. So that's the kind of people you're dealing with. Sex magic and bowel children. And, all these people got together after they did, experiments using acoustics to map out the firmament and realized that this place is a contained, closed system.
So why don't we just fall off the edge?
For the same reason, the space asteroid question. Yeah. So
Why don't we fall off the edge, dude?
I definitely think they know. The people at the top know. And that's
Someone definitely knows at some level, and then there's a couple of guys that also know, and then they just tell everyone no, there's definitely nothing weird going on. Just proceed as normal, and anyone that questions that from there gets fired, killed, disappeared, transferred to another department, that sort of thing. I think that's really how it works. It's not there's a whole bunch of people that know. I think the data that is disseminated from the higher ups and the way everything's classified, compartmentalized, even the people that are disseminating the data necessarily wouldn't even have to know because they're getting it from somewhere too. So the amount of people that would have to be in on whatever is incredibly small. People think that it goes exponentially more people, but it's actually exponentially less.
It's very, very small. People at the top in the military know that they don't have boom boom bombs that that do
those boom booms.
Yeah, do that nuclear boom boom stuff. People at the top of virology know that certain things don't aren't what they're supposed to be, and at the very top of NASA, Space Force, all the other space agencies, they know that not in Japan they know that moon landing was a piece of crap. Russia knows it's a piece of crap. China knows it was a piece of crap. We know it's a piece of crap. All you got to do is look at the piece of crap from July 1969 Apollo NASA supplied photos. A piece of crap, and so you got your Apollo apologist, out there. It's just it's
apologist, defense attorney, lawyers, dude.
Yeah, it's the craziest thing. You got your Apollo apologist, and which is really disgusting. And then you got your outer space apologists who think that you can push off of nothing in the 10 to the negative 17 tour of outer space. It is absolutely insane. And as I said earlier today, science, which is actually non-science or nonsense, tells you that they're all about science, but they ignore Newton's third law of motion. They ignore the second law of thermodynamics. They ignore inverse square law of light. They ignore the physics of light, and they ignore the physics of water, because the physics of water says large bodies of water at rest cannot bend. But we're told if you go out a mile this way or 2 miles this way, and you go out 2 miles this way, when you can no longer see it, that water starts to bend. And so it's the most crazy thing in the world, and they will actually believe it. And the thing I talked about earlier, 13.7 billion miles of photon travels, 86 trillion, 600 quadrillion miles in order to reach our eye here on Earth. People will go, yeah, that's true. And it's the most far-fetched thing that people will go, yeah, that's true. It's impossible.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And as Rebecca points out in the chat, that China joined in on the psyop with what they presented for the dark side of the moon, and I think that speaks to the people that realize it. I think that speaks to the power of the mind control that that this mechanism provides, of like going into space and controlling the heavenly body. You categorizing and measuring and identifying everything. All this stuff about the heavenly bodies is clearly a powerful mechanism, because all the countries are getting in on it now, and even the Emiratis, or I'm sorry, the United Emirate, what do they call it? I can't remember the name. The United Emirate something or whatever just got in on the ISS. Everyone's getting in on it. And it's really all about capturing the hearts and mind of the children, because once that first generation grows up with all the love for the space propaganda and stuff, when they're raising their children and they see the space propaganda, they're going to be like, oh, look, little Timmy, they're finally going to the moon. They're finally going to the Mars, but they're only going to be seeing it through a computer screen. But they grew up their whole lives, hearing about how one day they're going to hear the United Arab Emirates. Thank you, Rebecca. They recently got in on the ISS shindig. They're out there having a sock hop party or whatever it's called, sock party, pajama party. I don't know what a sock party is, but if they could do that, they're also doing that up there as well. But yeah, you can see how they're all doing it. It's a powerful mechanism to tell people what the heavens are.
Yeah, someday we'll get into talking about indoctrination and brainwashing and what they did to our children and what they did to us when we believed we live on a spinning space ball in the vacuum of outer space. We'll get into Hermes Trismegistus.
Your boy, shout out to Hermes Trismegistus, dude.
My boy, and
my boy.
And I don't think my boy lived, just like I don't think Copernicus lived, but for another day, we'll talk about Hermes Trismegistus, and we'll go all the way up through Copernicus, Kepler, Newton, and we'll come today, and we'll show that there was actually that there is no solar system, there's no elliptical orbit, there's no photon, there's absolutely nothing. All there is us, and that's all we are, and we're made special, and we're actually unique, and we're not this little speck that when we die we cease to exist. And we'll talk about those things in the future, because it's very, very relevant to saying, screw this outer space monkey religion, this fairy tale that we're actually
monkey religion, dude.
It is
sun worshipping monkey religion. That's such a good way to put it, because when you boil it down, it literally, refute it. Go ahead, spot the lie. You can't do it.
Yeah,
So Jim, sorry, I don't want to cut you off, man. Let's bang out the rest of this fucking Asmodon thing, dude. Let's get rid of this shit, so we can move on and get to some other shit.
Here. Antarctica is the only continent that doesn't look like anything else. All the other continents in here look perfectly fine. Antarctica, though, and it's not necessarily an ice wall, it's just Antarctica. It's really, really, really high continent.
So you think Antarctica's all the way around?
Yep.
So where's the North Pole?
North Pole's in the center. North Pole's in the center. South Pole doesn't exist. Compasses don't work down in Antarctica. Most people don't talk about that. The Antarctic Treaty says that no corporation in the history of the world can set up shop down there forever.
What's outside?
Well, that makes sense, because if a corporation was able to set up shop there, they would be able to research and find out that it was flat.
That's a tough one, isn't it?
Indubitably.
Well, because I mean, if you can't get outside, you're not going to know for sure. But I mean, I don't think, my personal opinion is this isn't a one-off. There's not just one of these. There's more.
You have been accused yourself as being sort of a member, I think, of Warner Brothers or something. You're making this up.
Government agent. Yeah.
So, I mean, aren't you just all turning on yourselves? Like, you can't believe anything.
No.
Not even your own.
At the end of the day, again, like the Scottish Highlands, no offense, but they can all agree on one thing: they hate the English. That's the same sort of thing here. We disagree on so many of the finer points here, but at the end of the day, we all agree on one thing: that is not a globe.
And so, what proof do you have? No one has ever been there. No one has ever taken any pictures of the ice walls around.
Yeah, because that's like one thing is that like nobody's ever like how could like if the Earth isn't a globe, then why do we have globes? Why would they start off making it more complicated?
So no one can get anywhere near. Why can't we go there? Why can't I?
And you can go there if you want to spend.
I don't know. Maybe they were sun worshipping cultists who really were into spheres because their whole religion was based on the sphere being the perfect object and it represented divinity. So they came up with a math equation to represent, pi and a perfect sphere and all that. And then they built a coordinate system around that. I don't know, to honor their false religion and, create a system around their beliefs. I don't know.
If you go back to Hermes Trismegistus and what people have said, he actually knew about planets and stuff like that. He actually taught, if you believe what he said, if he lived, but he actually talked about planets. He talked about planets a lot, further back than Copernicus did. And Copernicus, gave homage to Hermes Trismegistus in his On the Revolution of the Heavenly Spheres, which was May 1543. And then Newton did the same thing with Hermes Trismegistus Emerald Tablet. He translated the Emerald Tablet. So all these people that the
old sacred tablet, dude. Classic fucking lore within the truth community. There's always a fucking sacred tablet somewhere that some guy translated. He knew all the secrets. He wrote it down in a book. They killed him. The book's gone. Nobody can find it, but remnants of his magic and stuff are still talked about to this day. It like literally everyone's a fucking magician. It's crazy, dog.
Oh, I would love to. We're gonna talk about how math became reality. I would love to dive into on the Revolution of the Heavenly Spheres. I don't know how many people have ever read it. I haven't read it yet, but I would love to talk about Hermes and Copernicus on the Revolution of the Heavenly Spheres. Yeah. And I would love to look into the Emerald Tablet that supposedly Newton.
Their tablets were like iPads.
Yeah, I would.
Dude,
I don't know how.
Dude, okay, Jim, hear me out. You know how in society right now everyone's walking around with their cell phone and they're just like zombified? Imagine everyone in ancient Babylon was walking around with a fucking Hermes Trismegistus translated tablet. Like, they just were walking around absorbing all this great chemical knowledge, as above, so below, and all that shit. That's so funny, dude. It's just, I feel like that could be like a really good comedy sketch.
We think these iPhones are so cool because we walk around and we tap on them and we read them.
Personally, I use stone tablets now, actually.
Hey, they were doing this with stone 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
They were.
Yeah. All right. So we're almost done with your boy Asmongold. We'll finish off here.
No, I want to see the wall. I mean, the wall itself extends for a long way. You can get to the Antarctic coastline. That's not a problem. Yeah, I want to go to the wall. If you're going to go all the way in here, now the Antarctic Treaty forbids it. You cannot go there. It's locked. That's the only unbroken treaty in the history of
How do you know that?
No, it's not secret information. None of this stuff is secret.
I thought Hitler lived there.
Sure, where are you getting that information?
What, the Antarctic Treaty? It's public domain. I mean, it's a piece
of Hitler lived there. It's not an argument.
Every corporation in the world, no one can set up shop there. And it's also the only piece of real estate in the world that's not owned by anybody. That's strange, since we're fighting real estate all the time. But yeah, I mean, speaking of resources, when that treaty was built in 1959, environmentalism wasn't even a word.
Can you get about that? Is there any trade between the
I don't know. Couldn't tell you that. To your proof questions, I know we don't have a whole lot of time left. Sorry, let me give you the 5 bullet points that I gave Georgetown physicist. First one would be long distance photography. Curvature of the Earth is 8 inches per mile squared. We eventually should not be able to see over the hill. We should be a hill. We should be gone. Technology has changed that. Now we can see things way further. It's a wonderful working done underneath some UK teams where they're actually seeing a horizon behind oil platforms at 10, 15, 20 miles. Gravity versus the vacuum of space. Gravity's holding things down, right? That's gravity. No problem, right? You make the vacuum chamber, you pull a cork, everything's going to rush upstairs. Yeah. Why, when you go outside, why isn't the air outside rushing into space? You can't feel the atmosphere. Why isn't it going to space?
Yeah, true.
Can't say gravity anymore because gravity didn't hold the air in this room for that little test. Third, the moon eclipse is too small. The moon eclipse is 70 miles wide and the moon is 2,000 miles wide. We never see that in nature. The moon eclipse can't. We say
that makes sense because like you look up at the moon and it's like this small. It's really not that big. There's no way it could be the size of the planet.
That's 70 miles
wide. True.
Fourth would be the moon temperature. That's a spooky one. I didn't even know that until about 2 years in.
Oh, really?
The moon generates.
So you can tell when someone isn't familiar with the vacuum argument when they don't immediately start trying to tell you about molecules bouncing off of each other and gravity holding the molecules, even though gravity's strength is inversely proportional to the distance. So the further an object gets away, the less strong it would be. You know, all these different mechanisms that they say that would actually make the that would go against them. Like, he's not familiar with it, so he just kind of glosses over that and focuses on some part of the fucking moon. You know,
I tell you,
which is warmer.
there is no way you can get me on a show like Mark Sargent is on, and they flash across there, you know, the Earth is flat. I would not be caught dead on a show that would say that this guy is on, he believes the Earth is flat.
That's so funny you mentioned that, because I just put a text thing under your picture that says this guy's a flat earther.
Yeah, so it's just
Just fucking with you.
I'm telling you what, Alan, I'm telling you what, AM.
Yeah, yeah, JM.
I'll tell you, if I went on a show and if
you're
I ever
you're
did,
STPing.
I would have this hat on,
Nice.
and I would let everybody know that if you think that I'm a flat earther or I believe the Earth is flat, forget it. It's not, and this is the reason why. I'm going to tell you one thing. The biggest word in our movement, if you want to call it a movement, the biggest word in our movement is stationary. You can call it geocentric, but then, you know, half the population is going to run and see what it means, you know, in their encyclopedia, or they're going to Google it. But most everybody knows what stationary means. And so one of the biggest words that we can possibly put out there for the world to see is stationary. Because once you find out that we're not moving around the sun, Michelson, Morley, all the way through Joule's, every interferometer experiment ever, that shows that we're stationary, and we have, you know, a sidereal rotation, which translates motion down to the Earth, which can explain some small Coriolis effect in the southern latitudes. Once you realize that we're stationary, everything is gone for them. Everything for the globe, everything for their ball, everything for their fairy tale outer space is gone once you prove that it's stationary. I'm sorry, if you lose the revolution around the sun, you lose the rotation of the Earth. You lose the rotation of the Earth, you lose the ball, you lose the globe, planet, oscillating spheroid, whatever you want to call it.
You know what's really interesting is I completely agree with what you're saying about the stationary, and in fact, the importance of it isn't understated by the technical flight manuals and things like that. The very first thing they say when they talk about flight simulations and, you know, what pilots should do and how they should conduct themselves when operating the plane, is the first thing they say to assume is that the Earth is a stationary, non-rotating, level plane, right? Very concise phraseology, and it's consistent within all the literature for these types of manuals. They all say stationary, non-rotating, level plane, in that order, pretty much, now that I think about it. So yeah, that's really interesting that you bring up the importance of the stationary aspect rather than the flatness aspect. And you're absolutely right about, if you take away the any sort of motion, they lose the globularity. They can't be globularist anymore.
And my other point, Alan, I would piggyback on that. If you take away the flat part of it, which is kind of really, I'm sorry, folks, you flat earthers, you take away the flat part of it, and you replace it with stationary, then you've gotten rid of the stigma of being a flat earther, and you've gone to stationary, and you've gone from flat earth, which is kind of considered non-science and kind of non-educated. You didn't go to college in your stairwell. That you go from flat, not so educated. You go from flat, you go to stationary, and then you segue into Michelson Morley, just like that, and you become a scientist right away, because then you can explain Michelson Morley, you can explain every interferometer experiment, you can all the way up through Joule's, Joos, you can get into Dayton Miller. And
are you talking about Jews? It's not Joule's, bro, it's Jews.
Okay, it's JOOS. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, that's Jews. I was wondering when you said Jules, I was like,
it's well, some people call it juice. But
Jews.
it's
I call them. I refer to Jews specifically as the Jews just by reflex. Like I don't even try and do it. So feel free to address them however you like. Really, it's your show, bro. Half of the show is yours. So if you want to call them the Jews, like I'm not going to stop you.
I heard it was called juice. You say it like juice, orange juice, but the spelling is JOOS.
Yeah,
And so
I'm not buying it. That's something a Jew would say.
come on, whatever.
All right, let's go.
But all of a sudden, when you get away from flat and Earth, which is we're not flat and we're majority of water,
Right.
no matter what your feeling is. Once you get away from flat Earth and start using stationary, then all of a sudden you become scientific and you're no longer a dummy or uneducated flat earther. You actually have a brain, and you can tell them about Michelson, Morley, interferometer experiments, and the sidereal rotation of the sky, which translates motion down here to the Earth. And all of a sudden, they look at you and they go, "Oh, maybe I might listen to this person. Maybe I might."
No, Jim. They look at you like this. They look at you and they go. They start to consider it. You can see the wheels turning, and then they go, everything you just said. Where'd you get your degree? It's not possible. What about the ISS? GPS on my phone proves the globe. I just watched ISS footage. If the Earth were flat, how would wouldn't you fall off the edge? Like they just start fucking having a seizure, right? Like when there's a medical condition, when like you look at strobe lights and you start fucking seizing up. Epilepsy, like you become an epileptic. Like suddenly you become a globaleptic when you start getting when you start finding out information that contradicts your worldview. You start suffering from globalepsy, where you start going, what about GPS? What about this movie I saw? What about the guy on the TV that said that space is real and that he was just there? And what about that guy? It's like, oh, cool story, dude.
Globalepsy.
They're globaleptics, bro. They just start convulsing and talking in tongues. They're like, what about I can prove time dilations. Whoa, you can dilate time. You're a time lord. I didn't know.
So you gave me three things now. Thank you very much.
Oh, globaleptic. Yeah, you can keep that, bro. That's a good one.
You gave me globaleptic. Gave me photon foosball.
Yeah, they ask if you've ever been in a plane, bro. Dude, Rebecca, I had a guy. I was telling the story last night, so I'll just retell it quickly, just in case anyone from the chat is in the chat also, so they don't have to hear it twice. But anyway, what happened was this other Discord chat that I'm a part of, where I from a game that I used to play, I was just kind of scrolling through by chance and seeing what the lads were up to, and I see this guy like he going on this like mini diatribe about flat Earth. And how he has this like irrefutable, he states, I have this one simple refutation to flat Earth that no flat earther could ever answer, and like I never whatever, like this ultimate proof, right? This ultimate slam dunk for the globe. So I'm like, oh, okay, you've piqued my interest. Like, what do you got, bud? So and keep in mind, he said this like a couple of weeks prior to me messaging him back on it. So anyway, I quote the thing and hit him up, and I'm like, hey, I'm interested in what proof you've had. I've been looking in for the matter for quite a while. What do you got, bud? And he replies, time zones. Time zones. Oh, fuck, dude. Time zones, bro. So let's go on a quick time zone rant, because this video is boring as fuck. I literally can't listen to this guy pretend to do no research, because like, the potential that he got money to just play dumb and do this little review is I don't know. It's not zero, probably, right? So anyway, that's the wrong button. So we're gonna talk about time. We're gonna talk about time zones real quick. Let's see here. Okay, Jim, if you can, I'm gonna try and present so you could see it in real time as well. But it may.
We're gonna talk about time zones, huh? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna get time zone out of our fucking minds real quick. So let me see if you can see this. Hopefully it doesn't cause lag.
Hey, Alan, there's 24 of them.
Yeah, well, according to you fucking stationary topographical planers. right? Oh, shared the wrong window. That's not
Anyway.
gonna work either. Fuck.
Okay.
Fuck.
Okay. I want you to know from now on, we're not, Alan,
Yeah.
from now on, we're not flat earthers. We're stationary people.
Yeah, we're stationary people. Yeah. Stationary earthers, bro.
Yeah,
Oh, hold on a sec. Iru Landucci's in the chat. Yo, what up, Iru? How are you, man? Really appreciate all your work and the presentations you put out. And you know, I was actually just thinking about you the other day, Iru. You know how Jaren and Witsit have a bunch of anti-flat earther fans that, you know, make all these presentations to counter literally everything they say. Does anyone ever make anything to counter what you say? Because your presentations are typically so good and on point. Like I never see any like fight the flat earth or who's the other guy, McToon or anything like that. I never see them go, Iru made a presentation and it was wrong because of this. You're always on point. I was wondering if anyone ever, like, is there an Iru crew that like debunks you or anything like that? Or has everything you've made just been so spot on that like literally nobody can refute it? Always wanted to ask you that since I thought of it yesterday. Yeah, so we'll do time zones really quickly, since the dude was talking about that. And so I don't know if you can see this, Jim, or if you just have to wait for it to catch up on stream. That's really unfortunate. But yeah, so here we have the Gleason map, right? We got 24 time zones. The sun moves at 15 degrees per hour, right? According to the glob, the rotational speed is you know what produces that, right? So if this is a glob projection, the time zones should represent that, right? Well, let's look at the time zones. Where was that world map? Where was that really good one? Oh fuck! I allowed it. No. Yeah, here's one. So what we got here is the old Tuckin Peak, right? So when you have this situation right here where these lines are outside of what you would call a, I don't know, evenly distributed 15 degree per hour rotation that would, you know, reflect that. These time zones that they use are man-made constructs that they use to hide extra land, and all that was detailed in a really good video by Earth Banjo. There's some excellent graphics to go along with that to show how they did it. Flat Earth hidden time zones. So if anyone's interested in this video, oh, you want to link to Iru's channel? How do you make people mods on here, dude? Hold on, mod. I have to figure it out later. Name. Here's Iru's channel, Rebecca, if that's what you're asking for. Iru's channel's awesome, dude. And he has a rock fin too. I don't know if you rock fin, Rebecca. I don't know if you dabble. But Iru's rock fin also pops off. So anyway, yeah, real quick on the time zone. So anyway, dude was like, I got this slam dunk refutation, you know, the slam time zone thing. So I kind of illustrated this to him in like a quick couple of pictures and showed him, you know, what they're doing here with this situation. And he no response, just quit talking to me. I'm a fucking idiot. Guy wrote me off. You know what I mean? So that's always really fun. So I think we'll wrap up on the Asmongold. Like that's pretty much beating a dead hooker. Oh, we got, what are we moving on to? Let's check the agenda here. I'm watching and enjoying the presentation. Awesome, man. So let's move on to physical mechanisms, Jim. Our new favorite subject, right?
Favorite mechanisms for travel of photons?
Yeah, well, part of it, yeah, for sure. For sure. So let me make sure OBS is still displaying the correct screen. Fantastic. Okay, so for physical mechanisms, where are we going to start here? Let's start with.
Oh, here we are. This
Yes.
is Alan's wheelhouse right here.
This is the old wheelhouse, as they say, right?
Yes,
So, so
I just want people to know, we have a few people listening, and we're going to share this. I want everybody to know, 'cause I tell everybody this: if you get a chance to see this 95 slide PDF from Alan, How Math Became Reality, spend the time and watch it. Just do it. And if you got to watch it 2 times, watch it 2 times, because this will change your world as far as your in-depth knowledge of being a stationary topographical planer.
yeah, for sure, man. So kind of to give some history for those who don't know, I wanted to design the presentation in a way that if you had no knowledge of the subject matter, you could easily get a broad overview of the prerequisite information needed to decipher what the subject matter is actually talking about. So that's kind of what I went into it. That's why it's like, such a long thing and has, prerequisites where it kind of explains everything, gives definitions and provides on that. And then then it expands into the so-called proofs or whatever. So what we're going to get into, we're going to kind of breeze through the prerequisite information. What I wanted to kind of do is give like a quick presentation that I could clip later and keep it to about 20 to 30 minutes where I go over the importance of this physical mechanism situation so that when people watch the presentation, they'll have a reason to watch it. They can watch like a little summary and go, oh, okay, I'm going to understand how this completely refutes what they propose as the mechanism for, how the universe works and everything. So
Here's the question, Alan. Can you take this? Can you take this 100? What is it? An hour, 25-minute presentation, 94-page PDF, and make it a 30-minute presentation?
I could, but it would have this tendency to like get sidetracked on trying to explain, to give context to the subject matter. So I'm trying to work on just concisely keeping it at the actual subject matter. But yeah, I could, because basically what it boils down to is the mechanism to even cause redshift and to cause things like, displacement of starlight. It requires a physical mechanism for energy transfer, and they don't have that. What they tried to do with space-time is remove the necessity for that transfer, and then by implication say that space-time curvature and gravitational fields actually facilitate the energy transfer. Yet all the experiments done to verify this give not only a null result, are also completely explainable by classical wave theory, which involves, the propagation of light having a medium, to facilitate that energy transfer. So the big distinction into why they had to get into that is because of the Michelson-Morley experiment when they realized that they couldn't, or that they didn't detect any movement of the Earth to go along with their presupposition that the Earth orbits the Sun, at 30 kilometers a second. And when they didn't get a result, yielding that 30 kilometer per second, they came up with a way to say, well, the motion can't be measured against this metric because the metric in which we were trying to measure it doesn't exist. But to explain that, they had to explain how a wave could propagate through nothing. So they came up with this idea of the photon and wave propagation using mathematical equations to express conceptual ideas, right? And then just kind of pretend like they're true. So to get into the photon really quickly before we get into everything, since we're already here, I'll just kind of roll with the momentum. So these are the wave equations that are used for a photon. We have it's basically E equals HF, right? So E equals HF being E equals Planck's constant times the frequency, right? That's the basic format of what's going on here. So when they wanted to,
and let
Sorry.
everybody know what Planck's constant is. It is 6.626 to 10 to the negative 34, which is 33 zeros for the 6626. So just remember that.
Oh, I didn't know you were a planker, brother. That's very interesting. So,
I am a. Someday I will impress you with my quantum mechanics.
indubitably. So, so what we got going on here is this part of the wave equation describes the energy of the photon. So, describes the energy of what they say is traveling through the vacuum of nothing. This part of the equation describes the energy and the frequency of the photon, right? So this is, how many oscillations is going on um, within that photon per second.
Yes.
And then, so what they did here to describe the physicality that is required for the photon to propagate through nothing, they come up with this equation right here. But before we get into that, we're going to look at the classical equation to describe momentum. So they say P equals m times v. So they're saying that P equals mass times velocity. So in the case of the photon, where the photon is a massless object, they would say 0 times, and then velocity would be the speed of light, right? So that's not going to work out because you can't 0 times it. Obviously that's not going to work. And the whole charade is up right there, right? So they redefined how to describe momentum using a wave equation. And I know what you're thinking. Well, shouldn't they use an equation that describes, mass, since, the prerequisite for momentum is having mass times velocity? Yeah, you'd think, right? But they opted not to do that or whatever. So anyway, what they came up with here is basically they're saying that the wavelength times the wave vector describes the energy necessary for the wave to propagate through the vacuum itself. So they're saying the wave carries itself based on a math equation and not actually any physicality. So this whole idea, when people say there's a wave particle duality, photons appear to act physical, you can just kind of throw that shit out the window. Any acts of physicality is completely metaphorical, and it has no physicality whatsoever at all. It's purely described and derived from a wave equation specifically in such a way because it doesn't have any mass to have momentum, and it requires a reification fallacy to say that the energy of the photon itself is what's perpetuating it through the vacuum of space. And quick synopsis on classical wave mechanics, right? So on classical wave mechanics, they presupposed that there had to be a medium for the wave to propagate through. So what they were saying is that a wave is a perturbation in a background medium. So what that means is the wave, so to speak, causes an excitation, a vibration within a medium, and as that energy moves through the medium, that vibration is what is propagating the sound, the light, the luminosity, etc., right? So to compare that in sound waves, if you had a car coming at you and it was honking its horn, the sound waves would be compressed, so you would hear a high sound. You would have a high pitch, and that's due to the sound waves are vibrating the air molecules and water molecules at a faster rate because of the cars moving towards you, and that's also adding to the sound wave, right? So the waves in between are compressed, so the medium in between is vibrating more, so you hear that high pitch noise, right? And that's all facilitated by the medium, right? And then when the car passes you, the waves aren't compressed, they start expanding out, there's less vibration within the medium, and that's when you hear the low pitch, right? So that's a high to low mechanism, all facilitated by the medium of air. And that's how classical wave mechanics explains acoustics. Okay, so this is the foundational understanding that these people were applying to waves and light. That was the fundamental understanding. So after the Michelson-Morley thing, which I'll get into later, but to explain the results of that and still have wave propagation through the vacuum, they had to redefine momentum. And basically, this is how they do it. Now, here's another problem with this equation, just for icing on the cake and just for fun. So if a photon of a frequency of 3 hertz exists for 1 second, I'm sorry, let me back up for a second. I got ahead of myself. This equation, E equals HF, has no variable to account the time. So what does that mean? It's subject to the existence of the wavelength and the speed of propagation. And the speed of propagation is C, which is 299,792,458 meters per second. So if that's the case, a photon that exists at 3 hertz, or at a 3 hertz frequency for 1 second would be 300 million meters long, as described by the physicality in this equation. But again, there's no actual physicality. If you try and explain to someone, even if you get them to acknowledge the mathematical problem here, and this work is done by Dr. Juliana Brooks Morenstein, who did a review on a paper called A Frequency-Based Theory of Catalyst, where they go into this frequency time variable issue, and a channel on YouTube called It's BS did an excellent presentation providing visual representations and a further deeper explanation and understanding of this matter. And he cites Lori Ann Gardy, aka Fractal Woman on YouTube, as a pivotal teacher to understanding what he did his presentation on. So this is all valid, solid. This is like a real problem that they all just ignored mainstream physics. And this is just something that you can point out how ridiculous it is. So so a 300 million meter long photon would be the distance, they say, from the Earth to the moon. The moon being, in heliocentric mythology, they say it's 384 million meters. So, so that's basically how they get away with wave propagation in a vacuum. There's no wave particle duality. It's purely conceptual and derived from math. And they even have, what is this H reduced Planck's constant thing. So what they do is, this is how they keep the mass of the photon at 0, but use multiplication of the wavelength times the wave vector to derive the energy, quote unquote, that's necessary to propagate through the energy that provides the conceptual physicality to propagate through a vacuum. It's so retarded, in my opinion. So that's what they're doing with the photon. Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, here's the thing. Here's the breakdown. One of the core equations in quantum mechanics is E equal HV, which stands for vibration, or E equal HF, which stands for frequency. The H is Planck's constant. Some people call him Planck, but it's Planck's constant. And Planck's constant is 6.626 times 10 to the negative 34. Now, if you write that out, you have 33 you have point and then 33 zeros and then 6626. So that H that you see in there is 0.033066626. So if you have E on one side, that is E equals Planck's constant, which is that stupid number I just read off, at times times vibration or frequency. So the E has to equal the other side. The one side has to equal E. It does not. It never does. But that is one of the big equations in quantum mechanics, is E equal HV or E equal HV or F. And so Planck's constant, we know what it is. And so now we have to figure out, which Alan is explaining, what V is or what F is, because we know what H is, and those two things have to equal E, and they don't do it, not even close, and that's why it's all crap.
Yeah, and like Jim was kind of saying, with the unit analysis of the equation itself, which also is done on this video that I recommend, I'll leave a link here in a second. He goes through all of that, and yeah, E does not equal HV, just based off of even the unit analysis, because of the fact that there's no time variable. It's fucking crazy that they overlook this and go with this whole wave particle duality based off of a wave equation. It's crazy. So
yeah, if you actually think about wave particle duality And if you actually think about E equal HV or E equal HF, if you actually think about it and look into it, it's nonsense.
Yeah. So we'll get into light propagation really quickly. In a second. All right. Better one. Okay, so in this video by Ken Wheeler, link if anyone wants to follow it. And here's the whole link with the timestamps for the relevant information. I think it's a 20-minute video. So he goes into detail using his ferrocell in a magnetic field. He demonstrates redshift and blue shift of light, and he also, by moving the ferrocell over top of the magnetic field, he demonstrates relative motion. He inverts the polarity of the light and demonstrates inverting those poles and shows relative motion Doppler shift, basically using the magnetic field as the medium to facilitate the energy transfer. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how I just describe the photon being a wave and what the implications of that are, because there's actually no physicality of the photon. So what people will argue when you get into arguing about refraction and things, what they'll say is, let me see if I can MS Paint this real quick. What they'll do is they'll draw two lines, curve line, just real quick. So what they'll say is curves up, right? Kind of fucked it up a little bit, but I'll explain what's going on. So when they talk in terms of refraction for long distance observations, they're going to turn around and tell you that, well, refraction happens because photons are traveling through air molecules and they're bouncing around, and when they come out on the other end, the probability that a photon traveling up, and it hits this air molecule and it bends back down, and the probability that a photon that's headed this way hits it and diffracts back up, so that it all evens out, so that when light is behind the ball, it'll conform to the curvature based on the photon, hitting little baby particles, and we're talking quadrillions of billions of particles, that each quadrillion, billion, million, zillion of photon that's, emanating from the sun would have to hit and propagate through in such a way in unison that it would, lift up an object that's behind the curve, so that a person that's on the other side could see it at eye level, right? So that's kind of giving you the basis on how a person will argue a photon, which I just demonstrated, is a purely mathematical concept, and it's a wave. So it doesn't propagate through water in that way. It's not what's happening. There's not a tiny particle that's hitting another tiny particle, and then by random happen chance, it goes in the direction that will provide you with a visual image that gives you a consistent horizon. And by consistent, I mean just a visual horizon, not something that's splotchy and all fucked up because some of the light particles went a different direction, so they're not making it to your eye. You can look around and see basically everything. So what I'm going to get to here with that in a second is that the layer of atmosphere is separate from what you're seeing from the illumination, right? And the atmosphere itself is a lens that's kind of like overlaying, and what you're seeing is like a screen, like atmospheric conditions compounding at a distance, is like creating a screen, and that like vibration in that screen, the effects in that area is what's producing things like refraction and like where the horizon like moves up and down and varies and stuff over time, and with weather conditions and temperature and stuff like that. So I'm saying that that's what's happening, and it's not due to photons traveling along curvature randomly due to probability calculations going at just the right angle to basically always match globe predictions, giving whatever amount of refraction is required to maintain belief in the globular model. So real quick here, we're going to describe the ferrocell and how all this relates to light. So the ferrocell is two lenses, and then you take like a petroleum lube or jelly or something like that, and in between them, the ferro lenses are two flat lenses. You put lube in between them, You put iron filings or a couple drops of blood between them. The iron in your blood will create this hologram effect, or the magnetic filings will create the magnetic effect. Anyway, and then you duct tape an LED ring light around it. And when you do that, when you place it over a magnet, you'll see the toroidal field of the magnet in like a hologram, right? So what's happening is someone that believes in photons would say, these photons are all bouncing around in here and traveling in different directions, and it's interacting with the magnetic field. I don't think that's what's happening at all. I think what's happening is this LED ring light is putting out a frequency, and that frequency is causing an excitation in the background medium of ether, and that excitation is taking the form of an oscillation, like it's vibrating, right? Circular vibration. So that oscillation is producing a visual spectrum of light that we can observe, right? Now, the frequency is being retarded by the magnetic field. So if it's going against the if the rotation of the oscillation is going with or against the magnetic field, it's going to oscillate at a different speed, and that different speed is going to correspond to a different visual frequency that you see in the light. So there's not necessarily little tiny particles going through here. There's just an area of illumination where this frequency is interacting with the background medium, and also this magnetic field medium. And what we're seeing here is the retardation of the frequency itself. So if you were to take this ferrocell and put it over, so-called space-time curvature or a so-called gravitational field, you could never produce any sort of red shift of light or blue shift. Oh, and also just for a quick addition to this, when he moves the ferrocell over it, he flips the polarity of the light, so the red shift goes here, the blue shift goes here, demonstrating relative motion, red shift. And this is all, like I said, facilitated by the mechanism of the magnetic field. And that's I'm sorry, the LEDs are interacting with the ether with their frequency. That's causing an excitation, which is producing the visual light spectrum that we see. And that is also being interfered with by the magnetic field, which is producing the red shift and blue shift, right? And this effect is actually called the Zeeman effect. This was discovered in the early 1900s. I forget the exact date, but this is something that this is a well-known effect. There's another effect called the Stark effect, where this can be done using an electric field. I don't have any demonstrations for that. But if you look for demonstrations of space-time curvature, if you look for demonstrations of gravitational fields causing redshift, you won't find them. And the reason for that is they're completely conceptual ideas, and what they're trying to do. Yo, what's up, Boke? How you doing, brother? Doing a little presentation here on physical mechanisms and energy transfer, which are things that are required to produce the effects that are attributed to the proofs of general relativity. So things like gravitational redshift and gravitational lensing, where they say that light physically, the position of stars and things like that in the sky is altered by gravitational fields when in the presence of a gravitational field. So we're getting into the mechanisms of that, how they what they lied about, and how they try to attribute natural phenomenon to relativistic effects. Cool. Oh yeah, brother. So we'll continue on here. So the Stark and Zeeman effect, well-known effects, still no mechanism for being able to demonstrate these types of effects using space-time and gravitational fields. So back to backtrack here, now that we've established some prerequisite lore, and I completely obliterated my goal for keeping a short video and stuff like that, we'll just go ahead and keep going though. So this is like a some dude's article or whatever based on historical events. So this is when Albert Einstein published his theory of general relativity in 1915. He proposed 3 critical tests, insisting in a letter to the Times of London. The Times of London had to do it in an English accent. I've read this 47 times. Every time I do it, I want to read it like with an English accent and say, "Oh, the Times of London." I don't know why, but I had to get it out. Sorry about that. it felt a lot better getting it out the second time than it did the first time. So anyway, in his letter to the Times of London, he says that if any one of these things were to be proved wrong, that his entire theory would collapse. And the things that he suggests, or that he says, that he puts forward as proof of his theory, is that he says that he can explain the perihelion precession of Mercury. He says that he predicts that light will be displaced by gravitational fields, and he says that gravitational redshift will occur as a result of light, photons, or the wave. Well, actually, in his case, photons specifically, in their interaction with the gravitational field. So these two things are kind of these two things are in tandem, and by virtue of providing the physical mechanism of space-time curvature and showing that it can facilitate an energy exchange, it's also intrinsically related to the perihelion of Mercury. So we're going to bang out all three of these experiments at once, in like a 3-for-1, two birds, 3 stones, or whatever they say, right? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to skip down to, let's see. How are we going to do this? Reflection of light waves. Okay. So we'll do a little back history on Eddington before we proceed. So actually, fuck it. We'll just kind of do it in order. So the first. Sorry, go ahead.
I think the perihelion precession on Mercury is something that the astronomers and the heliocentric people love to throw out at us. So I think it's a really good one to go over that.
Yeah, we'll start with it because, like I said, they're all intrinsically related, so they're all going to collapse on themselves together. So as stated in the article, the first thing that that had to be overcome for the space-time concept and the mathematical concepts that Einstein was proposing, he had to establish that these weren't just mathematical concepts, that these were physical things that interacted with reality in such a way to produce the effects that he attributes to. So a way to affect the orbit of celestial bodies, the way to affect light and how it travels, and the way to cause gravitational redshift. And again, that's the facilitation of the energy transfer mechanism to cause redshift, to cause Doppler shift, as we were talking about earlier with the acoustics with the car and the Doppler shift, right? So the perihelion precession, there was a guy named Urbain Le Vergne in 1846 who basically took observations for about 40 years, I think it was, and he mathematically extrapolated from his observations that Mercury has over the course of its orbit, it has a perihelion precession, meaning that over the course of its orbit, instead of just going around the sun at the same position year after year, it moves ever so slightly, right? And he mathematically extrapolated from his 40 years of observations that it would move, or that it would precess in accordance with 5,600 arc seconds. And for those of you who aren't familiar with arc seconds, 5,600 arc seconds would be a degree and a half. So over a century, they're saying that this planet moves a degree and a half. How they could ever possibly extract that from terrestrial observations, couldn't tell you. When you do any observation from the ground, you're looking at a maximum of 1 arc second of viewing, and most typically, due to atmospheric conditions and weather and whatnot, you're looking at 2 to 3 arc seconds of viewing. So these really fine, precise measurements that these people are extrapolating that add up to a full degree over a year. So, over 1,000 or 100 years. So just to give you some quick context, if you hold your finger out at arm's length and you look at the sky, if you hold your arm out at like a 45-degree angle at the night sky, that area that your finger covers up, that little area, that's 1 degree, right? So they're saying that over 100 years, the orbit is displaced by the width of your finger at arm's length, basically. And a little more, because it was, a degree and a half, I think it was, 5,600. So anyway, all that had to be done here was a mathematical extrapolation, which Einstein did by coming up with, there's actually several different ways that they solve this, but one of the ways that they solved it was basically, it's alleged that Einstein copied this guy who solved the same problem 17 years prior to Einstein using this equation, And this equation is derived from Newtonian mechanics, and this little t squared here basically signifies that there's a medium that sets a propagation speed for the speed of light here, c squared. So he was trying to merge the ether theory with Newtonian mechanics to provide an explanation as to why the perihelion precession existed. Because as we remember, while the Michelson-Morley and stuff was going down, they were all under the presupposition that the Earth was in motion and that there was an ether. You know, obviously there still is required to be an ether, but they lied about the way propagation works in a vacuum, and nobody can test it or call them on it really. So we just kind of roll with it. They have a huge monopoly on that. So basically, once they control that aspect of it, they have everyone believing, you know, in the speed of light propagation and all this shit. So anyway, Einstein copied the same equation, and he uses a capital T squared in his equation. And what he says in his equation is that the capital T squared is the total time of Mercury's orbit, right? So literally same equation, different explanation, different mechanisms, but like literally the complete same. And they went with Einstein's explanation because they could do more with it. They could do more with the coordinate system. Once you get into the coordinate system, where the XYZ axis and the T axis that they added for time, once you get into that, where everything, all those axes are relative to one another, or can be relative to one another, and then the only thing that you measure by is the speed of light, the constant, right? You can mathematically extrapolate and explain any phenomenon in any way, just by imposing different mechanisms of space-time curvature, which they fully do with what they do with tensors, but I'm kind of getting digressed into the full presentation, which I shouldn't be doing because I'm trying to stay on point for the perihelion precession. So anyway, basically, just to give a quick recap, these are all Einstein, you know, solving this or whatever isn't a prediction in any way. It's basically just imposing mathematic restrictions on his new coordinate system to explain it, and that's all there really is to it. So they say that Newton could only predict and the arc seconds in the accordance of 5,557. So, you know, there was this missing 43 arc seconds. They say that's how they tell this whole narrative, right? So they say that Einstein predicted it, but these are postdictions, to be clear, not predictions, right? So all he had to do was explain it with his math equation that some other guy already did. So is it super impressive? No, but keep in mind the Gerber's guy's equations were rejected because he couldn't, you know, well, it would have had other things. They would have had other problems explaining things with the coordinate system that actually that they couldn't bend or contract to explain everything with. But basically, his mechanism of propagation to explain what was he saying, that the gravitational field had a propagation speed. So to explain that how that field gave an impedance to the speed of light, he didn't have a mechanism for how that would work, how there would be an energy transference. So they rejected his theory, and Einstein provided a mechanism where they said, well, you don't need a mechanism for energy transfer because in my coordinate system, everything's traveling on geodesic paths, which are just straight lines. And then when you apply the fourth dimension of time to the coordinate system, you're actually seeing that due to gravitational fields caused by the distribution of mass and matter and energy in the coordinate system, that the coordinate system itself curves in such a way that these geodesic paths are altered, so everything's actually traveling along space-time curvature. And so everyone was like, oh wow, dope, no way. So we don't have to explain anything anymore. We don't have to come up with a gravitational reason to explain, you know, how it's pulling on it in such a way that it produces this perihelion precession. We can just say that this is a gravitational effect and space-time curvature is curved in such a way that it produces this fluctuation in the perihelion precession, right? So that's just to give a broad overview of how they that calculation and how it's not necessarily indicative or proof of anything. So the second thing they had to do was they had to get your boy Arthur Eddington to come in with his observations and say that starlight was displaced in accordance with Einstein's relativistic predictions, and that would further provide an actual observational evidence in of a prediction where okay, we can say that maybe space-time is a physical mechanism. Maybe things are traveling along geodesics and it's actually traveling along the space-time curvature due to gravitational fields. Because a gravitational field and space-time curvature at this point are pure mathematical concepts. And they've never been demonstrated to have any physicality to them or interact with electromagnetic energy or anything like that, right? So they have to overcome these things to supersede Newtonian mechanics or get into a position where they can say that Einstein is an extension of the Newtonian understanding of gravitation, right? So Eddington goes out and does these observations during the May 29, 1919 eclipse. He has his boy go to a place in the west coast of Brazil. He takes 16 observations. His boy Cromlin, he takes 16 photographs. They say that due to the temperature differential, the apparatus that he was using contracted and expanded, so they couldn't get any accurate results from his observations. So unironically, length contraction and expansion didn't go the way of the globe this time. But we'll get into why his observations were null here in a second. So basically, it came down to Eddington's observations, who took 16 photographs as well, and only 2 of those observations survived. And from that, after mathematical corrections and probability calculations were done, he was able to derive mathematically that he observed a starlight displacement during the eclipse in accordance with Einstein's prediction. So basically what they were saying was the Newtonian framework prediction was going to say that the gravity would act on light as if it was a particle. So the center of the sun's gravitational field or force or whatever would attract the photon as if it were like a physical particle, and it would like pull it towards it a little bit, altering its path. So that was the mechanism described in Newtonian mechanics. And in Einsteinian mechanics, he said that the speed of the photon would the energy or whatever would cause its path to basically be double that of what Newton predicted with the gravitational force, right? So it's just a slight alteration to Newton, really, but it's all postulated on this gravitational field and space-time curvature facilitated by geodesic orbital paths. So he used his observations to do that, and then 7 months later, after him and the boys got together, they had a meeting at the Royal Society and the Royal Astronomical Society, and they gave unequivocal announcement that Eddington, with his 2 photographic plates that have questionable circumstances surrounding them, to say the least. But I'm just giving a broad overview. If you want to read the full transcripts of the meeting that these people had, you can get into the back and forth. But basically, the TLDR takeaway from it is that, it doesn't matter if Eddington had poor observations. It doesn't matter if the only other substantive proof of general relativity was a mathematical equation that was tailored to fit an observation. They were going to go ahead and say that space-time curvature has physicality and it's affecting, reality in these ways, and that this is the new method of explaining the heavens that they're going to go with, right? So, I'm sorry, were you going to say something, Jim?
Oh, can you show them the 2 plates that are right, two slides below the gentleman with the mustache?
Oh yeah, these right here. Yeah, so these are what they say that they observed. I mean, who knows what the fuck any of this is? These aren't even the stars that they say observed. The ones that they say observed exist within this, which is what they say is the solar limb of the sun. And the solar limb of the sun is already presupposed to have a medium. It's supposed to be, some sort of plasma gas. There's strong electric and magnetic field currents going on in here. A lot of pressure and temperature going on. The sun's corona and all that, right? So to really distinguish relativistic effects from Newton effects or anything like that, and establish starlight displacement, they really would have had to get displacement, out here in this area, right? Because the gravitational field doesn't, albeit the strength of it drops off at a distance, it's not going to just be in this area where there's a medium, right? So it turns out that the 5 observations that Eddington was able to extrapolate from his photographs were only within this range, right? So they kind of have a little disagreement on, there's a little pushback on, how can we establish a cause and effect, blah, 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 right? But as that's kind of happening, they're not really having they're not really giving any pushback on that criticism. They're just kind of dancing around it and going, no, it's definitely gravitational displacement, unequivocal support, whatever. But then we get to this guy who is Dr. Silberstein, who gives the most eloquent bang out ever and provides some insight into some gravitational redshifts, experiments that are lesser known, talked about experiments. So what we have here is this is from the transcripts of the meeting. So this guy says, but in spite of what the president said, I believe this result to be essentially an isolated fact. There is a deflection of light rays, but it does not prove Einstein's theory. It cannot logically be deduced from his theory of gravitational effect that in absence of the spectroscopic results, and as far as we know from St. John's and Evershade's observations, the predicted shift of the spectrum lines of an amount exceeding almost 100 times the amount of probable error of the modern spectroscope, as Professor Fowler has just told us, is not obtained. Professor Lindman's attempt to explain the obstinate nullity of the effect by the motion of the luminous gases and the line of vision is not satisfactory. For St. John's and Evershades for St. John was well aware of such complicating circumstances and therefore purposely observed as many as 43 lines at the sun's center and almost as many as 43 at the 35 at the limb. Now we cannot well assume that the gases move everywhere toward or away from us only to suit Einstein's theory, i.e. just to compensate for his theoretical shift effect. Meaning that they can't explain not getting gravitational shift readings in accordance with the relativistic predictions due to things like gases in the sun's atmosphere, right? So they're saying that he took observations at different points of the sun where you can't say relativistic effects were blocked by, the Fraunhofer lines. And what they're talking about with the Fraunhofer lines, I think they mention it later. This is just spectroscopy where they look at the spectrum of light and they see an emission line and they extrapolate what possible element could be what could have caused that absorption, how would the light been have absorbed in such a way by that element to produce that line in the spectral reading, right? So this is what they're saying. So they're saying this dude took observations at the solar limb, he took it at the center point, to get various distributions of gas or whatever the medium might be, to figure all that out. And he's just saying no spectral shift was observed. Absolutely none. I'm sorry, not spectral shift, gravitational redshift, which would have established a cause and effect relationship with any starlight displacement that Eddington would have said. So this is the most important key factor of everything. So you know how they tell the story that Eddington's observation was the most important thing in proving relativity theory? No. The most important thing of Eddington's observations would have come from the observations that went in tandem with them by your boy Charles St. John and John Evershade. And we'll get into some more on them later before we exit out here. So let's see. Let me finish reading here now that I explained what the whole lines thing meant. As I've already pointed out on other occasions, if there is no spectral shift, Einstein's coefficient G subscript UV, which is how he describes space-time curvature, which is derived from his field equations, pointed out on another occasion that if there is no spectral I got backwards on that, sorry about that. Einstein's coefficient GUV, which is entirely responsible for it, must be unity. So he's saying that if there's space-time curvature, as described by Einstein's coefficient that describes space-time, if there was space-time curvature, it would have caused gravitational redshift. And if yo, what up, Canadian Bacon? and if there was any gravitational redshift, if there's no gravitational redshift, then Einstein's coefficient, which is entirely responsible for describing that, must be described as 0. So saying no curvature, right? So continuing on, we shall see at once that the coefficient and his well-known approximate solution become unity at the same time. One being, and then he rattles off the equation that establishes the relationship between all of that, so that the world element reduces simply to, and then he talks about further, this is the space-time interval describing the curvature within the coordinate system described by Einstein. And since the equations of motion are always given by ij times ds equals 0, so basically he's saying here that if the because they describe everything in geodesics, if there's no space-time curvature, then the motion has no curvature, and the motion is therefore just a uniform linear straight line. So we'll continue on reading. We ultimately see that the spectral shift is absent. Einstein's theory does not give such refinements to the planetary motion as in a secular motion of the perihelion, but not even in the ordinary Newtonian or Keplerian motion. So back to the geodesics and space-time curvature. Without space-time curvature being a physical mechanism to facilitate energy transfer, it can't cause an effect. Star displacement or orbital mechanics can't explain any of it. So how Einstein used his equations to say that he explained the perihelion precession with space-time curvature becomes null and void, and how they can say that Newtonian mechanics using circular orbits can be explained, can't be without space-time curvature, can't be explained, and it can't explain the Keplerian motion either, which is elliptical orbits. It can't explain any of that because in the math, everything, the motion is described as traveling along geodesics. So this is an absolute body bag for the theory. And in short, the orbits of the planets would be straight lines and the planets would move uniformly in spite of the sun's presence. So no gravitational influence to impact space-time curvature, which would cause the geodesic orbits to travel along the curvature. So the theory stands or falls on the correctness of the results of Evershades and St. John. It is unscientific for the moment to assert that the deflection, the reality of which I admit is due to gravitation. Man, I read that completely backwards. But basically saying it's unscientific to assert for the moment that the gravitational effect just observed is due to Einstein's field equations. It is in this sense that I declared a moment ago to be an isolated fact. The discovery the discovery made at the Eclipse expedition, beautiful though as it is, does not in this circumstance prove Einstein's theory. We owe it to that great man over there, pointing to Newton's portrait, to proceed very carefully in modifying or retouching his law of gravitation. This is by no means defending blind conservatism. The spectral shift required is perhaps 100 times, but certainly not less than 40 or 50 times the probable error of measurement, as that guy was saying, and as St. John's and Evershades say, using their spectroheliograph equipment to take these redshift observations. And so the solar spectrum can, even in this country, be observed many times a year, and the matter can thus be settled without having to wait years or centuries for an equally advantageous eclipse. If the shift remains unproven at present, the theory collapses, and the phenomenon just observed by astronomers is a fact awaiting to be accounted for in a different way. So, what that guy is saying, to give another brief summary here, is that the redshift observations that were going along in tandem, and even actually before the eclipse observations, these guys were consistently failing to make gravitational redshift observations, and even using the light from Venus multiple times a year, they couldn't get any observations using gravitational effects. So to say that there's a cause and effect relationship established, let's just go into pretend land here and say that Eddington took solid observations of displacement and those 5 stars give relativistic predictions. And let's even say a couple of them are even outside of the solar limb, right? So to go, okay, cool. Now, how do we establish a cause and effect relationship with this thing in space, right? Well, these redshift observations and predictions that came out of them would have established that mechanism to facilitate that energy transfer, to facilitate that geodesic orbit, to have that curvature. So when Whitsitt and Professor Parks were talking the other day, and they get into that little 20-minute segment about the nature of space-time and what it is exactly. And even Parks defaults back and just says, space-time is the fabric of the universe. It's everything. It's blah blah blah, right? It's this medium, but it's also this nothing, right? It's very circular and undescriptive, and it must absolutely unequivocally have physical properties to facilitate this energy transfer to produce these effects that they're saying are attributed to the proof of it. Now, what we've just uncovered here is multiple observations and experiments that were done that directly refute gravitational and space-time curvature, right? So they chose never to talk about this. This isn't something you're going to hear about. Nobody talks about how these guys went out and did observations and proved Eddington's observations. We only hear... What did I just do? Did I fuck that up? Sure did. So what we only hear about is Eddington's observations, and because they're obscuring this story because it's a direct refutation to relativity theory. So, Jim, do you want to take a quick 5-minute break or something? I gotta run to the bathroom and get some more water and stuff, because we've been going for about 7 days. I don't know how long we've been going. Oh, we've been going for 2 hours, but yeah, let's take a quick 3 to 5 minute break, and
If you want to, sure,
be
no problem.
right back. Cool.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back. All right. Put this up for a second. I'm gonna put text up. Yeah, AFK. There we go. All right, I'll be right back. I apologize. I have to run to the bathroom and get some more water and stuff like that. Be back in a second.
Oh, it's all cool.
Yo, back to me. Second. All right. I had to fucking change shirts, man. It's hot as fuck in here.
Is it?
Yeah, dude. I started burning up, and then I just just smoked too. So, oh, it's extra fucking burny. I mean, extra hot now. Ugh. All right, welcome back, Rebecca. Glad you're still with us. Hope you're enjoying the presentation. Shout out to the boys in the chat. Who do we got in the chat? Who are the legends that are in the chat room? The legends. We got let's see, how do you see participants? Participants. We got your boy Rebecca, and that's it. So, congratulations, Rebecca. You are the primary observer, as they say in celestial observations or whatever. You're the preferred reference frame. Excuse me. Apologize for coughing into the mic. All right, so we got ears channel, time zones, things of that nature. And dude, just looking at my beard, it made me like go, oh man, I should itch that. Like I wasn't even itchy, but I saw it on the screen and I was like, ah, I bet it itches right there. Does that ever happen to you, Jim? Where's your beard at, bro?
I never had. I had a mustache a long time ago, but otherwise, I was a political right winger conservative until I figured out politics doesn't matter anymore about 2 years ago.
Oh yeah, you were that goody two shoes, huh?
I was that I was that right winger who voted for Reagan and
Yeah,
Bush and all that stuff,
classic,
and Trump.
classic. Yeah,
Yes.
I remember Trump, dude. Those were good times, dude. Political theater was really interesting to to analyze and watch unfold, and it really did a number on people. But before we digress too far into that, let's we're almost done wrapping up the fraud here, because what I wanted to jump into is I wanted to I never tried super hard to follow up. Well, I followed up a little bit with the St. John stuff, and what I found was like a memoir or something from St. John or Evershade, I can't remember. But basically, they don't even talk about their Einstein, observations and stuff in their memoirs. So this is like, not something that these guys talk about, and that was the most I could find on it. That was the most I could find on it. Sorry, I just had to make sure I don't have toilet paper in my beard. It's been known to happen. Where were we at? St. John. So anyway, I didn't really find anything, on that to be like, hey, these guys absolutely banged it out. But I recently kind of came across some other stuff, so I was going to follow up on that lead, and I just decided it would be cool. Look at me just deciding shit for myself like a grown adult. I just decided that it would be cool to look into it live. So what do you think? So now that we've established the baseline of information here on what these guys were doing, and then so to fill Rebecca in, while she's here, like we've been through this 2 hours together, Rebecca. So I'll take the 2 minutes to fill you in to give you the further context so we can all continue on this journey together. When they take these spectroheliograph results, I'm assuming you're not familiar with spectroheliograph and redshift and like how they make these observations and things, right? So what they do is they take a telescope, they look at a light in the sky, they look at a celestial body, they look at a star, what have you. They look at that light, and that light comes through the telescope and it hits a prism. And it gets split into its respective wavelength spectrums. So, the colors of the rainbow, basically. They record these, I almost said two different words at once. It's not how that works. So anyway, the light hits this prism, gets split into its respective wavelengths, and then it hits a camera. In modern days, it hits a camera or some sort of like sensor. I forget what they call them, like DCC sensors or something like that. Anyway, in the old times, they hit a photographic plate, and then what they would do. Sorry, I have to clear my throat. Give me 1 second. Okay. So anyway, it goes on a photographic plate. They would then compare that to a colored in version of the color spectrum that they draw. They would then make conclusions about the nature of the light that they're examining based on these colors. So when something, how earlier when I was talking about the frequency of light, the frequency of sound, and how when something's coming towards you, you get a high pitch, and when something's moving away from you, you get a low pitch. So what they're saying is, how they apply this mechanism. This is called the Doppler effect. How they apply this mechanism to analyzing starlight is when they split it into the spectrum, they analyze the red and the blue shift, and that's how they determine if something's moving away from them or something's moving towards them, if there's more red or blue shift. And when they use their equations to make, when you hear, oh, we made this prediction, gravitational redshift, et cetera, what that means is they've used let me see if I can pull one up here. Where's your boy Schwarzschild? Yeah, Schwarzschild. So what they're saying here is like they use a mathematic equation. In this case, you could use the Schwarzschild metric, which is if you use this part of the metric, not going to get too into it, just kind of gloss over. But this part of the equation specifically, yeah, this right here, this represents how they can extrapolate what the frequency of light should be based on the gravitational effects predicted from aspects of the rest of the equation, right? So when they get a frequency, they're looking for it to correspond to a color. So when they're deriving all this from their observations and they're saying like, oh, we matched this prediction or gravitational redshift, this or that, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about applying math equations to light and making assumptions and like theorizing what happened to it based on its journey, and then seeing if they can impose or find natural phenomenon that imposes restrictions that would go with or against their, to support their theory. Kind of, does that kind of make sense now that there's more context to it? Second. Sorry, I just blew my nose into the mic. I'm sure that was really cool. All right. Okay, so that's how they're taking these measurements and doing this analysis when they're talking about light and gravitational redshift and these spectrum analysis. So what this dude pointed out is that two men made took spectral readings from starlight, during the same stars that Eddington says are displaced within this area, and he found no redshift corresponding to what is predicted out of relativity theory's equations, right? So this is, like, as I was saying, this is really bad, because without that, relativity theory is just a mathematical concept. Math is my thing. Their physics never was. Yeah, that's interesting. So you should kind of appreciate, or understand what you can do with math in terms of like when you construct a system where you impose the like, for example, let's say you were going to describe an I-beam. So you would use equations that describe the material of the I-beam, right? Like the strength of the steel, and all the factors that go into the molecular structure of that, right? So with space-time curvature, he basically invented a material, you know what I'm saying, that has no way to be physically tested, its properties or anything like that. And then using that system, they just apply that with their Cartesian coordinate system and adding the time axis, and they can mathematically impose any restrictions that they need to cause space-time curvature to react in such a way that the system can dynamically explain any phenomenon without it being physically true. So what I mean by physically true is when you analyze the tensor equations that are used to describe like an I-beam, for example, you're going to end up finding that those equations describe like, the physical substance of the iron, like how strong it is, how resistant it is to XYZ forces, the strength of XYZ forces that are being implied. So if you have that system and you're applying it to physicality and something real, it has to match up with reality. The things and the lights in the sky are like, abstract concepts that are being described with abstract concepts, but they're trying to apply physicality to the abstract concept. So although space-time curvature has no mechanism for propagation, has no ability to cause like friction for something to travel along a curve on, any basic shit like that, it has no mechanism for, and it's just purely mathematically conceptual. So from there, they just to bring it into reality, they need to attribute some sort of physicality to space-time and say that it can facilitate things like gravitational redshift and and the displacement of objects through their geodesic orbits as they travel along space-time curvature. So without any of that stuff, they can't proceed forward with their lie. And then, so that's basically where we're at in terms of the proof that they put forward and lied about to push the theory forward. Because the day after this meeting where these guys got together to discuss this event, they got the U.S. press and the British press to all simultaneously announce that relativity was the new, Wonder Bread, and that the laws of gravitation now obeyed Einstein. Well knowing, that this absolutely didn't prove this. And then so I came across this earlier today or recently. And this is from a paper written by a guy named D. Kennefick. This is his paper. Your boy D. Kennefick, titled Not Only Because of Theory, Dyson, Eddington, and Competing Myths of the 1919 Eclipse Expedition. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Rebecca. Damn, dude, you do learn quick, dog. You're that quick learning bad boy or bad girl. So what they do here, or what this guy brings up in this paper that I was reading. So he says, Eddington had already shown himself prepared to cast aside Einstein's theory if another one, which might be more in accord with measurement, could be found, as shown by his interest in the unified field theory of Swiss mathematician Hermann Weyl. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's Well. Anyway, Swiss mathematician Hermann Weyl, at the time when Einstein's theory seemed likely to fail the solar redshift test. On December 16, 1918, only a few months before the planned expedition, Eddington had written to Weyl, one reason for my interest in your paper. Wow, okay, I kind of breezed through this earlier and I didn't fully grasp what was going on. This is hilarious. So this is Eddington writing to Hermann Weyl, Swiss mathematician who was working on a unified field theory. Electron microscopes and observatories at off-limit devices. Yeah, absolutely. So Eddington writing to Weyl, one reason for my interest in your paper, and this is his unified field theory that Well's proposing, is that it seems to me to reopen the whole question of the displacement of the Fraunhofer lines, leaving the theoretical prediction unsettled. Perhaps you will differ from me as to this. Charles E. St. John and John Evershade seem to be quite decided that the experimental evidence is against the deflection, and this is a rather severe blow to those of us who are attracted by the relativity theory. I venture to think that your theory may show a way out of this difficulty, but that is a guess, and that's published in ETH Bibliothek Zurich by your boy Hermann Weyl, Notchless, right there. So that's actually crazy, dude. So he heard about, what this paper was pointing out is that before the Eddington observation was going down, can you full screen the slide and zoom in on the writing? Yes, absolutely. Sorry about that. Sure can. Hopefully that makes it big enough. Yeah, so what was I at? So what's going on here is they were already doing these redshift tests, these gravitational redshift tests, and Einstein's theory was failing consistently, as we were talking about from this guy, because he's referencing, prior knowledge actually too, which I didn't even realize until just now. I started kind of putting this together as I was reading it. So this is really fascinating. So Eddington, who's the biggest Einstein proponent and all that, and gets super into it, and basically made Einstein famous and framed this whole Newtonian deflection versus Einstein's prediction for the eclipse stuff, right? So he framed this whole thing to perpetuate relativity theory, and he writes this dude like, hey, the lads doing the experiment that would really prove relativity theory, like on an actual physical level, aren't able to do so, and they're quite dead set on that their experimental evidence is against any of providing a physical mechanism for any sort of deflection. And this is rather a severe blow. So maybe I can use your theory to explain this and get out of it. Fascinating, dude. Like really fucking sheds light on the awareness, because actually I was talking to someone about this presentation and this problem, and they were trying to downplay it, like, oh no, the Fraunhofer, the redshift lines, no big deal. It kind of downplayed it, never talked about it again. This is a huge deal. Your boy was ready to jump ship for some other theory, right? Based on the fact that relativity theory could not produce the spectral shift necessary to prove that it's a physical mechanism. So anyway, we continue on here. What follows will largely take the form of a response to one of the contentions in a famous 1980 paper by John Ehrman and Clark Gilmore. One of the landmark trio of papers by those authors on the three classical proofs of general relativity. Ehrman and Gilmore's papers raise a number of thoughtful points about the status of the light bending test conducted during the 1919 eclipse. Most important among them, most important among them, that Eddington's careful framing of the theory test as a showdown between Einstein and Newton's predictions, played a role in amping things up and making it seem like, oh yeah, Einstein definitely superseded, because you'll often hear that Einsteinian mechanics superseded Newtonian mechanics, and you'll also hear that Einsteinian mechanics, or Einstein's field equations, reduce back to Newton's equations, and therefore they're covariant, and they have this really like eloquent relationship and all this stuff. They absolutely don't, and the covering up of this and the way that this is like never talked about and is like, it's actually kind of disgusting. Because like if you go into the transcripts of the Royal Society that these people talk about, like they're just like, whatever, we'll just go ahead and go with it. Especially this motherfucker right here, Arthur Eddington, so listen to this fucking guy. Actually, yeah, this is so bad. So realizing what he just wrote to your boy prior to his observations, where he fudged the numbers with Frank Watson Dyson to produce the outcome so they could mathematically extract it. Look at what this guy fucking says. So all that stuff I read earlier about Dr. Silberstein dropping mad bombs about the spectral lines not existing and the whole theory collapsing in on itself, and it all stands and falls on these two men's observations, and him look at and knowing what he wrote in a letter prior to the observations based on the failing or consistent failure of redshift observations. This is what this motherfucker said to Dr. Silberstein at this meeting, where he's lying. One word in reply to Dr. Silberstein: when a result that has been forecasted is obtained, we naturally ask, what part of the theory exactly does it confirm? In the case of Einstein's law of gravitation, it is not necessarily his theory that is confirmed, with the underlying assumption that ds is a quantity measurable by clock and scale. There still remains the question of the intermediary of what ds is, in which the Fraunhofer lines must further be tested. Okay, so what he's talking about here, ds, he's talking about the space-time interval. So going back to how Einstein described space-time field equation in the mathematics, that's what he's talking about. So he's talking about, hey man, we don't know by what mechanism the space-time curvature could produce the displacement. But we see the displacement, therefore, and it's in agreement with the amount that Einstein agreed that it would move in. So therefore, it doesn't matter that we don't have any observations to back up the physical mechanism necessary to facilitate gravitational redshift, to facilitate starlight displacement, to facilitate gravitational lensing. Quick fun fact about how lenses work. The change in the speed of light, they say, produces the mechanism for the magnification. So the that mechanism, that interaction with the lens, right? The medium of light interacting with the illumination interacting with the lens is creating that magnification, right? So what's gravitational lensing, which they say is like, you know, when they see starlight around, well, they're basically, that's what the starlight displacement is. So when they say that they observe that, they have no physical mechanism to facilitate lensing either, because the speed of light can't change, especially in the vacuum of space, and due to the first postulates of general relativity, or the first and second postulates of relativity, specifically the second postulate, which is that the speed of light is the same, or the speed of light in a vacuum is the same in all reference frames. So they couldn't possibly have a mechanism for even gravitational lensing. And this motherfucker's like, well, you know, whatever, dog. Being full well aware and about to abandon the theory if he could find greener pastures, from the Swiss mathematician Hermann Well. Really crazy, dude. Jim, what are your thoughts, brother?
I think that you're right on target here. I think the biggest thing that people need to take away from all this crap is that Eddington was the biggest proponent. I think you've mentioned this. Eddington was the biggest proponent, and he pushed through these 2 out of 32 slides. There was 16 slides on one expedition. There was 16 slides on another expedition on May 29th, 1919, and they all gathered together at the Royal Society on November 6th, 1919. And Eddington was the guy who basically pushed, the whole idea that we're going to use these 2 slides that you talked about a little while ago.
These 2 slides. And then, quick heads up, sorry to interrupt, but in this paper too, I'm not sure if it's before or after, but they also make reference that Frank Watson Dyson helped mathematically finesse the analyzation of the plates to produce the mathematical finessing for them to say that there was a displacement in accordance with them. Because what they had to do is they had to they took before and after images, and the before and after images for Eddington, the after images, the before images for the comparison, they were unusable. So we had to use comparison plates that they had back at another observatory back in London, England, and these plates were made of a different material. So we're dealing with like a different a different way to establish that margin of error and all that kind of stuff, because like different materials going to react differently, different circumstances, different temperatures and all that. And like, let's be honest, given all this, given the fact that they steamroll through the fact that there's no gravitational redshift, and they all know it, and they're just don't give a fuck, given the fact that they all go along with it,
I think if you look at,
just really says it all.
I think if you look at what they did May 29th, 1919, you look what they did November 6th, 1919, and then what the USA and UK press published in November 7th, 1919, and then you go to Eddington 1925, and is looking out to redshift, and everything expand. Nothing was contracting with blue shift. Everything was expanding with redshift. And the farther he got away, the more that expanded. So that's how he came up with the ever expanding universe. if you look at 1919 to 1925, you can clearly see this is crap and this is garbage, and it's all held together by money and intimidation.
Yeah, certainly, it certainly seems that way. So yeah, I'll continue reading this out, and then we'll take a look at a paper written by this John Earlman and Clark guy, because I'm interested in some mainstream narrative critiques of these things, of, like, older times, because a lot of the there's there's new stuff, but it's like few and far in between. So it's always nice to uncover something where someone like really goes hard at relativity within the mainstream paradigm. And shout out to Andy Selick. Um, I'm glad you found me a fellow Jeranism watcher, and hopefully financial supporter. I'm just kidding. For Jaren, like subbed or whatever. But anyway, yeah, he's awesome, and thanks for the appreciation. And if you want to get into the subject matter of it and and try and get a better understanding of it, you can contact me on Discord and Telegram. I'm happy to give personal, like literal personal coaching sessions, and like if you have questions, you can, I'll explain that shit to you, no problem. Here's a complete presentation I did with good audio on it. It's a little lengthy, but it goes into great detail on the subject matter and explains, how they get their measurements, the terminology, that sort of stuff, and the mechanisms by which they claim all these things work and stuff like that. And it'll get you familiarized with how everything works. And if I do say so myself, it's the best presentation of relativity on YouTube that's ever been made. Like, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Call me biased, but one of the greatest scientists of all time, Arthur Eddington, was also very biased, and he proved relativity theory. And we all know how fuck, that's not a good point, because we're exposing his lies now. Well, anyway, we'll continue on. I'll take you up on that offer. What's your Discord? Word. So I often hang out in the ADL Discord, which I'll give you a link to here. This is where I'm at, like, a lot of the time. And then from there, once you add me, like, you can just call me or whatever, or join the channel, it's whatever. Here is how do I generate a link? When I need to do something that I do all the time, but when I need to do it on the spot, my mind's just like, oh God, you can't do it. You have no idea what you're doing. I'm scrolling back and forth on the thing that generates the link, and I'm like, where is it? I can't find it. Where's the link generator? All right. So copy link. So here's the link, Canadian, and you're also welcome to join as well, Rebecca. And here is my Telegram, if you happen to have that. So you can join this. This is a channel that I have on Telegram. If you're not familiar with that app, it's a chat app, basically like Discord. I have a lot of references posted in there, like videos that I helped construct this massive behemoth titled How Math Became Reality. So you can find like a bunch of external references on things like Doppler shift, redshift, explanations of tensors and things like that, to get like visualizations of it. Let's see, Witsit and Mindshock. Yeah, dude, Witsit's a fucking beast at relativity, dude. Absolutely destroys it. It's awesome. If you haven't watched him in Professor Park's talk yet, definitely check that out. It's an absolute banger. But so what we were discussing here, to kind of catch you up to date, is there's a giant scientific fraud going on, allegedly, where this guy lied about observations that allegedly prove relativity theory, and we're going over the specifics of that. And oh cool, let me give you guys ranks real quick before I forget. Let me do my mod due diligence in the chat. Can you type something in general chat in Discord? Oh wait, there we go. Becky Jean, I think that's you. Give you member rank so you can talk. There's the member rank. Come on, dog. Why is there so many fucking ranks? Member. Jesus Christ. Oh, there it is. This is at the top. Okay. So Becky, Jean, you have member now. You should be able to talk in voice chat whenever you see a bunch of people in the ADL live chat. Feel free to hop in. Everyone in here is generally a flat earther, and or open-minded, and or believes in a lot of the same stuff that we all believe in. So a lot of common ground there. And then definitely, except DM. Hey, I was looking for the okay, yeah, Mew Gaming. Is that you, Andy, on Discord? Is that Andy? Mewtwo Gaming, or is that a different person? Anyway, doesn't matter. Here's my. How do I generate my link? Oh, it's actually in the presentation. Oh yeah, so if you want to send me a friend request, there's also that there. Okay, so we got everyone taken care of. Oh, Canadian bacon. Okay, cool. Definitely. Gotcha. All right, cool. Yeah. What I want to do is I want to do like a series where like we do like I go over these, tutorials, so to speak, and like do these one-on-ones and just kind of make video sessions of it. You don't have to get on video or anything, but if you don't want to, but that'd be cool if you did. But kind of go over the process and talk about it and all that. When I click the link, it says the invitation invalid. Oh, it might have been a one-time only invite, and I think Becky or I think Rebecca scooped it up. Very nice scoop, Rebecca. So create an invite. Here's another link. Hopefully you can get that one. Yeah, your invite link will expire in 7 days. Weird. It should still work. Correctly, NGS. Oh, I did give another link actually. Interesting. So he does have it set up that way. Yeah, Becky, Becker, dude. Like, Becky has a lot of nicknames you could go with it. Becky, Beckers, Becky, and all that. Rebecca. Just like my boy Jim. Sometimes I call him Jim, Jimmy, Jimka, Jimex. So. All right. Got everyone squared away on Discord. I think explanatory supplements. Take a look at this. See what we got going on. Oh, dude, is this a really old ephemeris? Do they talk about I heard they talk about black bodies that orbit the sun or some shit in these really old ephemerises. Do you know anything about that? Is that something worth looking into, or is that a dead end? Oh, word. Okay. Peace, Andy. You have a good night, brother. Or have a good day at work, man. Keep on keeping on, as they said in the movie Joe Dirt. Where were we at? Oh yeah, the fraud. Okay, so this guy's lying. Yes, classic. And then we got these guys wrote a paper on the lies. Okay, so yeah, so we're gonna look at John Ehrman and Clark Gilmore's 40-page paper. Probably not gonna read all of it. Just kind of skim through it, see if there's anything that jumps out that's interesting. Jen, did you have anything that you wanted to talk about for a minute or anything?
Oh no, we're all good. I'm learning from you, and there's always another time, so no problem. Keep it going.
Absolutely. Cool. All right. So yeah, what if they do bring new gear? Who knows? didn't watch the video. All right. So John, so this is the paper that this other paper referenced, and I just want to point out it's always really fun when you're reading a paper and then you jump to another paper to find out what they're talking, like to get the extended gravy on what they're talking about. So hopefully these guys have some interesting critiques that haven't been heard of, and we can gather some new arguments for the boys. So John Ehrman and Clark Gilmore, the gravitational redshift as a test of general relativity, a history and analysis. Charles St. John, this is the only paper outside of that first astronomical one where they kind of talk about it, but don't go into the specifics of these two guys, where someone actually analyzes what they're talking about. So hopefully this yields some interesting results. So Charles St. John, who was in 1921, the most widely respected student of the Fraunhofer lines in the solar spectra. And then again, that's talking about the spectral line readings and the displacement, the emissions, and interpreting all that. This guy was the grand master. Him and his boy, John Evershade. Yeah. So anyway, respected student of the Fraunhofer lines in the solar spectrum, began his contribution to the symposium in Nature in Einstein's theory of relativity with the following statement. The agreement of the observed advance of Mercury's perihelion and of the eclipse results of the British expeditions of 1919 with the deductions from the Einstein law of gravitation gives an increased importance to the observations on the displacement of the absorption lines in the solar spectrum relative to terrestrial sources, as the evidence on this deduction from Einstein's theory is at present contradictory. Particular interest, moreover, attaches to such observations inasmuch as that the mathematical physicists are not in agreement as to the validity of this deduction, and the solar observations must eventually furnish the criterion. Yeah, dude. So basically told them to go fuck themselves. Absolute bang out. Referring to, the mathematical physicists are just crying because the solar observations don't meet the criteria to explain their theories. St. John's statement touches on some reasons that St. John's statement touches on some of the reasons why the history of the redshift provides such a fascinating case study for those interested in the scientific reception of Einstein's general theory of relativity. In contrast to the two classical tests, the weight of the early observations was not in favor of Einstein's redshift formula, and the reaction of the scientific community to the threat of this confirmation reveals much more about the contemporary scientific views of Einstein's theory. Bam. The last sentence of St. John's statement points to another factor that both complicates and heightens the interest of the situation in contrast to Einstein's deductions of the advance of the perihelion, or of Mercury's perihelion precession, and of the bending of light. Considerable doubt existed as to whether or not the general theory did not entail a redshift for the solar spectrum. Oh, is it? 1 second. We're experiencing buffer. It should be. It's all green on OBS, the packets, so it should be better now. It was fucked up. Oh, my camera's fucked up, though. I accidentally knocked it out of position when I moved the plate. Yo, what up, Mad Mag? What up, Killer? What up, dude? It's been a long time, brother. This is my boy Jim, Mad Mac. We've been on the battlegrounds together, dog. You know what I'm saying? And we decided that we were going to start up a little podcast and do a little scientific critiquing, a little analyzation of, you know, physics and math, and try and see if we can learn and teach ourselves a little something about the alleged heliocentric world that we live in, and and the theories that support it. So welcome to the journey, and I hope you enjoy. And if I remember correctly, you said like maybe you can come on the show sometime or something, man. Same goes to you, Becca. Oh shit, is it back now? I hope everything I just said goes through and makes sense coherently and didn't just get fucking lost in the ether. That would be super unfortunate. So anyway, love to have you on, Mad Mac. You're a cool dude. He was around Jim when I first started making a couple of videos. He was watching and commenting and giving me feedback and stuff. He's that old school space auditor. Dude, do I call people in the chat space auditors now? Do I establish a fucking like a, you know, colloquial lingo and all that? It's hilarious. Calling everybody auditors. So anyway, where were we at on this Einstein situation? What's up, dude? Nice, dude. That's what's up. So, St. John, yeah, do you make YouTube videos, Rebecca? My boy Jim here makes videos. He made an Einstein video on April Fool's that fucking, I think it's probably one of the funniest videos ever made, possibly. Let's see, Jim Waterworld. Was that on Jim Waterworld?
August 1st. Yeah, April 1st. That almost 10-minute where I went from the source child metric to the.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yes.
Nice. He heard it all. Okay, cool. See if I can find your video real quick because I think it's hilarious, dude. Your deadpan, dry sense of humor, and like no, you don't giggle or smirk or smile. You just go through this whole fucking thing with such dry delivery. It's just, I really appreciate it. I watched it from your restream. Oh, did you? Nice. Wait, the gym video? The link? Yeah, link to that would be amazing. Jim, what's your YouTube channel, bro?
Oh, I think
I have to. Oh, wait, is it in the comments actually? I think it's this right here. Oh, yeah. Man, dude. Okay, here we go. I found it, Jim. So Jim did this video, little 10-minute piece, little presentation off the cuff about the history of your boy Einstein and his marriages and the complications that arise with that. And you know, it's a really good video. Highly recommend. Let's see what we got. This is triggering my OCD. I have to check my YouTube notifications. We got the Einstein video.
Yeah, it was introducing the James Child metric to the world. Yeah.
The James Child metric. The truth about Lilith. It's so good. Wait, which video? I made a good video. Which one?
That's it right there.
So the one I did. Oh, the one I did for Boke. Einstein the sweater maker. Yeah, your boy was famous for holding a patent on women's brasiers or whatever, right?
Oh my goodness.
Hell of a thing to hold a patent for it being your only, you know, big thing when you were such a major contribution to physics and cosmology, but like the only invention really that you could like really kind of like wrap your head around was like, you know, related to like, you know, sewing and shit. And not that sewing's not complicated or anything, but you would think like there's a lot of more of these like, you know, people that hold a lot of patents for things, that contributed